I need to move. No, I need to let go. Just because I don't know if this person is coming to sit in there. Usually I'm on the committee of seven, so usually like, okay. I'll just move.
I have one in my car.
He timed it perfectly, so let them figure it out, then I'll come. You need now?
Oh, yeah, just talk. She's muted. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
She muted herself.
Thank you for all being patient. I will now read the meeting agenda. Joint City Services and Environmental Policy / Health and Human Services Committee, Thursday, November 30th, 2023, 6 p.m. Order of all the chambers. The meeting can be viewed on Board of Alders YouTube. Board of Alders notice, New Haven, the Joint City Services and Environmental Policy / Health and Human Services Committee of the Board of Alders will meet in person on Thursday, November 30th, 2023 at 6 p.m. in the Board of Alders chambers located at 165 Church Street, second floor, New Haven, Connecticut, to hold the following workshop: LM-2023-0147, Order of the New Haven Board of Alders workshop regarding equitable civic, social, and economic opportunities for immigrant residents of the city of New Haven. Order Honorable Anna M. Festa, co-chair, and Honorable Alex Guzman, co-chair. Attest Honorable Michael Smart, City Town Clerk. These items are on file and available in the office of the City Clerk, room 202 at 200 Orange Street, New Haven, Connecticut 06510. For accessibility related accommodations, please call 203-946-7651 voice or 203-946-8582 TTY/TDD. Public comment / testimony may also be submitted via email to publictestimony@utt.gov before 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting, and this meeting may be viewed again on the Board of Alders YouTube page. Before we begin our meeting, we'll just quickly ask my colleagues to introduce themselves, starting from my right.
Alder Sal Punzo, Ward 17.
Alder Campton Singh, Ward 5.
Anna Festa, Ward 10.
Alex Guzman, Ward 1.
Sarah Miller, Ward 14.
Troy Streeter, Ward 21.
Once again, welcome everyone. Just some housekeeping before we actually begin. We do have an interpreter in case anyone is in need of the interpreter. Just let either Mr. Lucas or Jessica Rios know, our staff. Also, if anyone wishes to testify, there is a sign-up sheet to my right, which would be your left on a table, and we will limit testimony to 3 minutes.
Tenemos un intérprete presente, si necesitan los servicios del intérprete nos dejan saber. Tenemos una hoja al lado, allá en la pared. El que desee presentar su testimonio tendrá 3 minutos para presentar su testimonio y puede registrarse allá como persona a su testimonio.
And the order that we will go in is we have Kika Matos, who is the president of the National Immigration Law Center, that will be joining us via Zoom, who will be giving us a presentation. Then we will ask any of the agencies that are assisting the immigrants to come forward. So just listen for our directive, and we will ask that you come forward and give us each a quick presentation of what your services provide, maybe some of the challenges you face, and how we can better assist on the city level. And then after that, we will ask that the city come forward to address maybe some of the concerns, as well as give a brief presentation as well. But right now, we will start with Kika Matos, again, who is joining us via Zoom. Thank you for being here, Ms. Matos. We appreciate your time and apologize for starting a little late.
No problem.
Floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure that you can see me on the video. I don't know. Can you see me okay?
We can't see you. We cannot see you.
Oh, that's very strange. It does not. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, she's on. All right, here we go. Yeah. There you go.
There you are.
But now you're muted.
Okay. Does that work now? And I'm sorry, just for purposes of clarification, do I only have 3?
You muted yourself again.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you do not have the 3-minute rule. You
Okay.
have the floor to present whatever you need to present that is for the benefit of our community.
Terrific. Thank you very much. And I promised I will not overstay my welcome, so to speak. I think I prepared about 5 to 7 minutes of remarks. So I first of all, just want to thank the members of the Board of Alders Joint Committee for this workshop. Want to extend my salutations, and I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I'm actually in Puerto Rico at an immigration retreat with immigrant rights advocates from all over the country. Just for purposes of the record, my name is Kika Matos. I've been living in New Haven now for 21 years. I live at 89 East Pearl Street in the Fairhaven section of New Haven. I'm also president of the National Immigration Law Center, whose acronym is NILC. NILC's mission is to advance the rights and opportunities for low-income immigrants and their family members. And we do this largely through policy advocacy. We do it through litigation. We do it through advocacy, and we also do it through movement building. I want to just, first of all, thank you for hosting this workshop, and want to note that it could not come at a better time. Our nation is growing, and so is our state and our city, and much of that growth is due to immigration and immigrants coming to the United States. I want to quickly just share some numbers with you to provide context. According to the Census Bureau, the number of foreign-born people who came to the United States rose by nearly 1 million in 2022. And this year, through a number of avenues, we've welcomed a little over 400,000 immigrants to the United States. Some of those 400,000 and the previous 1 million from 2022 have made their way to Connecticut. The Connecticut Institute for Refugees and Immigrants estimates that this spring alone, about 600 migrants and refugees arrived in Connecticut. And in New Haven, the figures are imprecise, but Unidad Latina en Acción shared that they have welcomed about 300 new immigrants this year. And that's a figure that they calculate is probably about 10% of the overall number of immigrants arriving to the city. The truth is, a lot of these immigrants come in quietly. If they have connections to the city, they seek those connections, and they don't draw much attention to themselves. And they live in communities where other immigrants live. The need for support services is real, and it is critical. And building on our proud tradition as a sanctuary city that has historically supported immigrants and at times even led national innovations, I just wanted to share tonight some best practices that I think would be beneficial for the city to consider. And I want to say that after this workshop, I'm happy to both connect you to people who are doing this work, but also provide you with any additional documentation that would be beneficial for you. So here are some things for this august body to consider advancing. The first is to develop a citywide framework that focuses on welcoming new immigrants. The city could lift a page from 2007 and recreate an Office of Immigrant Affairs, or this is something that could actually be coordinated and led by the Community Services Administration in partnership with community-based organizations. Whatever the infrastructure, the goal here would be to ensure that newly arrived immigrants are aware and have access to services, basic services, including temporary housing, and if possible, access to more cost-effective permanent housing. Case management services could also be offered, including where appropriate, helping new arrivals in transit, and here only temporarily to reach destinations where there is family and community support, as well as economic opportunities. The truth is that some immigrants will come to New Haven in transit to somewhere else, and even temporarily, they might need some level of support. The city could also work to ensure that workforce development programs specifically target immigrant populations to make sure that they too are successful in securing jobs and employment where possible. Another recommendation relates to language access and cultural competency. It's really important for the city to get a handle of the most commonly spoken languages in the city that are not English, and to take stock of who's newly arriving to the city. I note that there is a growth of a significant growth in the number of Haitians who are coming to Connecticut, right? The language is not Spanish, it is a Creole and often French. There are other populations of immigrants in the cities who don't speak either English or Spanish. So getting a sense of the most commonly spoken languages in the city and developing policies and practices to make sure that all of the city's most critical services are linguistically acceptable and there's some level of cultural competence, I think, would be really important. I'm really impressed by the way that this session opened with an offer of Spanish translation. I think that's exactly a step in the right direction, but maybe expanding accessibility to other languages that are predominant in the city would be also helpful, and making sure that all of the city's most commonly used documents are available in these languages. And when people come to City Hall, maybe there's a list of folks in the city who speak multiple languages. There's some level of coordination. So if somebody comes and speaks a language that is neither English or Spanish, you can go through the list of folks who might be accessible, or even contract with language services, which are easily available and are becoming more commonly used. And the Yale New Haven Hospital would probably be a good place to begin to engage in the kinds of inquiries of how they use those translation services. Another thing to think about is cultural competency. And a simple exercise here would be to make sure that the city engages with community members to ensure that every time some big event or program or service is being offered and hosted by the city, that there's some level of engagement with the targeted populations and immigrants to make sure their levels of cultural competency around nutrition, around, for example, if folks have other needs that they are made available. And I'll give you a quick example of my son who went to public school in New Haven. Some of his friends were Muslim students, and they had a hard time finding places where they could pray in the course of the day. Right? Most of them actually stepped out in the hallway and prayed out in the hallway. And I think we as a city could do better than that. From welcoming immigrants, let me quickly move to issues that are particularly essential for the city's undocumented population, and some things for the city to consider. The first is universal representation. And this is really a terminology for making sure that immigrants who are facing deportation have access to lawyers. Why? because all of the studies show that immigrants who have access to lawyers are 10 times more likely to succeed in court and get some level of relief from deportation. There are a significant number of jurisdictions around the country where local governments have stepped up to create programs, publicly funded universal representation programs. There are 55 jurisdictions in 21 states today that have publicly funded universal representation programs. Strengthening workers' rights is a critical need in our city. You all are very aware of just the rampant wage theft, the types of sexual assault and sexual harassment and thievery that happened in far too many workplaces. There's a lot of harassment and exploitation that specifically targets undocumented immigrants, and they're often afraid to speak up or speak out and even call law enforcement, despite our commitments to community policing. I would encourage the city to think about drafting an ordinance that explicitly addresses wage theft and uses all of the tools that are available by the city. My understanding is that there is a draft ordinance that is being considered, but concerns about the legality of some of the context in the content of the ordinance. And my strong encouragement is for this city to be courageous and bold and to give teeth to this ordinance and work to have it passed really quickly, because wage theft is a serious problem in the city. Finally, let me talk a little bit about civic participation, and first of all, give a shout out to all of you, and just to say how happy I was to see that we now have a path forward, hopefully, so that immigrants can serve on boards and commissions, offering opportunities for immigrants to participate in the civic life of the city. Is really critical, and I hope that on the list of legislative priorities next year is an effort to address at the state level the legislative fix that is needed, so that the city of New Haven can move forward with the idea that immigrants in the city can serve on boards and commissions. And I think the Board of Alders weighing in and strongly encouraging the mayor to move in that direction would go a long way towards making moving the legislation forward. But beyond that, let me also just quickly say that I think it's really important for all of you and our mayor to make it your business to get to know the immigrants who live in our city, to get to know immigrant leaders who live in all of our 10 neighborhoods, and to meet with them on a regular basis. Please visit immigrant streets and neighborhoods. Go to cultural festivals that celebrate and elevate the many cultures that make up our city. Please think about creating spaces and opportunities for immigrants to come to City Hall, to feel welcome, to engage, and to really be a civic life, a part of the city, because it is really beneficial to all of us in this city. We have to recognize the many contributions that immigrants make to the city and make a space for belonging. Because if we do that and we create all of these opportunities, we all benefit. We benefit culturally, socially, economically, and otherwise. I'm going to stop there. I promised I wasn't going to overstay my welcome, and I will put myself on mute, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And like I said before, after this, I'm happy to connect you with whoever you need to connect with, and I'm happy to provide you with additional documentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us this evening with some, I feel, extremely important information. At this time, we'll open it up for any questioning from our committee members. So if there's anyone that would like to ask any questions, please raise your hand. Alder Miller.
Thank you very much for the presentation and all the information. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the ID card. You were here working for the city when this was established. I wondered if you could talk about sort of the original vision for it, how you see it has evolved, and also, you know, it became a national model, is my understanding. So what it's looked like in other places and how that might be different or similar to what we have here and what we can learn from its evolution.
Thank you for that question. Let me start off by saying that some of the very problems that the ID card tried to address are problems that exist to this day. The genesis of the ID card began in the early 2000s when folks who lived in Fairhaven and in the Hills started noticing an increasing number of immigrants who were coming to the city. And I was the executive director at Junta at the time. One of the things that we noticed is that this new Spanish-speaking population of immigrants, they were not Puerto Rican. And the Junta at the time was equipped largely to provide support to Puerto Ricans who have U.S. citizenship. And we were finding that there were huge levels of exploitation amongst undocumented immigrants. I'll give you one example. There was a notorious landlord in Fairhaven who would charge her tenants per person. And in one instance, a group of immigrants came to Junta. There were 10 of them living in a one-bedroom apartment, and each of them was paying $400 a month to live in that one-bedroom apartment. And she was cutting off their electricity. And when they came to Junta and we offered advocacy, her husband started harassing the immigrants and threatening to call ICE so that they would be deported. So exploitation also in the workplace, harassment in the workplace. And then there was a pattern that emerged where people didn't have access to bank accounts. And so when they got paid, they would cash their paychecks in the check cashing places. And then often on the day, it was usually on Thursdays, robberies would take place. And it got so bad that immigrants started being, and it's the kind of racial profiling. There goes a person to cash their check. By virtue of how they look, right, they would be robbed, and they started being known as walking ATMs. And so there was an increase in robberies and a real fear amongst this population. And so we started bringing people together. We brought in the New Haven Police Department. We brought in a number of social service organizations and Santa Rosa de Lima to try to figure out how we could solve this problem. And we came up with a set of policy initiatives. One of them was this idea to create a municipal identification card for multiple reasons. The first is that immigrants wanted to be able to open bank accounts. And when they went to open bank accounts, they were told that they didn't have acceptable forms of identification. That was one of the problems that they raised. The second is that sometimes when they got pulled over, the police would confiscate their foreign IDs and they would have no forms of identification, so they could never prove who they are. And what we learned also from the New Haven Police Department is that they had difficulty interacting, particularly with undocumented immigrants, because they say often we go to a crime scene, there's a victim, and we ask, or witnesses, and we ask, tell us who you are. Do you have a form of ID? And often they were either too afraid or they legitimately did not have a form of ID. And so people were walking around in essence with no sense of identity. Nobody knows who I am. I have no way of proving who I am. And it was also incredibly disempowering. And so we set about moving all of these initiatives forward. And one of them, the easiest one that the mayor unfolded at the time, was translating the most commonly used documents into Spanish at City Hall. So the first of that initiative happened in around 2005, 2006. The municipal ID concept was something that had never been done anywhere in the country. And we pushed that idea forward. I joined City Hall in 2007, and we began these efforts to create the first in the nation's municipal identification cards for anybody in the city who could prove they were a resident, irrespective of their status. And so we rolled that out in 2007. Now, we were really careful to make sure that this was not a proverbial scarlet letter. And so we did outreach to people returning citizens, people coming out of prisons. We targeted young people. We targeted the elderly, through the Youth at Work program, right? We wanted to make sure that young people had IDs, and that was one of the IDs, but we also attached services to the ID card. So there was a magnet stripe, so you could use it as a library card. We had a chip that you could use to load money and use it as a as an ATM card in places that accepted that chip. You could also use it to pay for the parking meter. And we also made sure that the city services access to the golf course and the beach and the lighthouse, you could show your ID and get into all of these places for free. Now, did the city, it was, there was a whole lot of drama. There was a raid in New Haven. There was a whole lot of opposition, a lot of threats. But the city courageously went through with this ID card. Let me say that today, there are over 70 jurisdictions in the country that have replicated New Haven's model and have ID card programs. And some of them have innovated. So the ID card, for example, has more of a bankable component so that you can use it legitimately as an ATM debit card. It gives you more access to health centers, to bank services. It allows a lot of people to open bank accounts. The city's efforts around the ID card were hugely successful, and thousands of people from the city obtained ID cards, right? But over time, I left City Hall in, I believe in 2010. Over time, the city's efforts waned, right? And so the efforts to innovate were not there. The efforts to reach out to newly arriving populations and other people coming to the city needing ID, there was a real neglect to that level of attention. And today, even though the ID card program still remains in City Hall, not very many people know about it. And so immigrants only hear about this through word of mouth. So in many respects, it pains me to say this, but now the city of New Haven is way behind when it comes to ID card programs because we haven't innovated, we haven't moved it forward, we haven't done the proper outreach, and we haven't asked and answered the fundamental question that I think you all are grappling with, which is, what are the needs of newly arriving immigrants to the city, and to what extent can an ID card, if we innovate properly, address and answer some of those needs?
Thank you.
Ms. Matos, what changed that you mentioned you left and things went downhill from there? We didn't keep it going. What changed that this occurred, that it didn't move forward?
Yeah, there were leadership transitions and staff transitions that took place, and so many of the people who had the institutional history that were working at City Hall moved on. There was leadership changes in some of the core organizations that served immigrants. No disrespect to Mayor DeStefano at the time, but I think he felt that the urgency of the moment had passed. And then there were budgetary constraints, right? There was no money in the budget to continue to innovate. I think Mayor DeStefano thought, well, now we have an ID card program, we've solved the problem. And there was none of that intentionality. I quite frankly think another thing that happened, which is good, but it still doesn't obviate the existing need for ID cards, is that finally the state of Connecticut moved forward with legislation that allowed immigrants, irrespective of their status, to get driver's licenses, right? So now there's more of an availability. If you have a driver's license, then you have a form of ID. And then subsequent to that, there have been changes in the leadership in the mayor's office and different types of commitments to issues around immigration. So quite frankly, I would say it is, it's probably too harsh a word, but I would say neglect, right? Neglect and a lack of interest and intentionality about really maintaining this as a critical service, not just for immigrants, but for other uniquely vulnerable populations in the city that still need some form of ID. And, coupling services that immigrants and vulnerable populations need with an ID card, I think is still something that is being advanced in, like I said, over 70 jurisdictions that now have ID card programs around the country.
Thank you. And do you have, we're going to be hearing from some of the agencies I'd like to actually consider them partners that help immigrants across the city. Is there anything, any advice that you might have for them to help us promote, or maybe they could also be a part of this this communication?
I would be happy to coordinate, to serve as a resource, to brainstorm, to think about innovations to the ID card programs and ways that we can make sure that we make this critical service available to people in the city. Because again, it's not just immigrant populations that benefit from this, it's other vulnerable populations.
We will also be hearing from the city, and obviously this is a program that the city started, and it's one that obviously we need to kind of pick up where we left off so many years ago. Any advice? You are a big part of this, and your suggestions, your help, your guidance is probably needed more than ever. Maybe that's something else that we can discuss, but that they'll be presenting as well. So any information that you can provide would be extremely helpful.
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you. Any further questions? Alder Guzman.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, and thank you, Ms. Matos, for presenting and giving a lot of really great ideas for the city and for us to consider and thinking about, in the future. One of the things that you mentioned, was coming up with a citywide framework for how we sort of look out for our immigrant community. And so I'm just kind of curious to hear a little bit more about maybe some other cities that you think have, developed a really great framework that maybe resemble, New Haven or, because I think it'd be interesting to hear about those cities.
First, I would just ask you to call me Kika, otherwise I feel old. I feel old and irrelevant when I'm called Ms. Matos, so please call me Kika. And then the other thing is I actually have an entire manual that I wanted to share with you all after that contains different models of how different cities, we're talking about Boston, New York, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Houston. Most cities around the country have some sort of welcoming approach to immigrants, from the proposal that I have of having an office of immigrant affairs that specifically is there to provide direct services to immigrants, to frameworks that are coalitions between city government and local service organizations and advocacy organizations. One simple thing to start off with is a manual. Most of these cities also have manuals online, and they have manuals available at City Hall that have a listing of all of the available services. And you think about, okay, what are the basic needs the residents of this city need, right? What are the, where do I go to, how do I sign my child up to go to school, right? Think about all of the things that people come to City Hall for. What are the most, the things that you are required to do in the city? Where do I go pay my taxes? Where do I go pay my fines? If you are able to vote, where do I go register to vote? Where are the hospitals? How do I access healthcare? A lot of these cities have either little booklets that they have available, or you can access them online in multiple languages that have a listing of resources for immigrants to access. Even thinking about beginning with something that simple and talking to immigrants is to say, what are the things that you found really difficult when you first came to the city to access? And then just begin with that. I think that would be a tremendous beginning, and to make sure that you, again, work in coalition with organizations to spread the word and to make sure that immigrants have access to that. And if not out of City Hall, I do think it is really important for the city to have a partnership with organizations, but it's also important to listen to the needs of immigrants. right? To spend time really understanding what the challenges are and responding accordingly. I mean, I can tell you off the top of my head the things that people mostly struggle with when they come to a new city. But I also think it's important for people who are now coming into the city, newly arrived, to get a fresh set of eyes about what they think would be most beneficial. And I believe that if I'm not mistaken, Unidad Latina en Acción was planning to be here today. They, more than any other organization in the city, engage really directly with immigrants arriving, but even things for people who literally come to the city with nothing but the clothes that they are wearing, right? Where do I live, even temporarily? Where do I get clothes for myself, for my children? How do I enroll my kids to school? If I need support for meals, right? Where do I go to until I land on my feet? And there's also the question of what City Hall offers, right? Because remember, most of these folks don't live in the United States. They live in countries where the availability of services is different, right? And some of these countries, there's a level of fear about engaging in government officials, right? And so you want to make sure people understand that our democracy is robust enough, right? That these services are available, and you can freely and confidently access them without thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be threatened. I'm going to have to get this through a bribe, or something terrible is going to happen to me and my family. And that also extends to the area of enforcement, right? One of the things that we realized quickly in New Haven after there was a raid, that immigrants cannot distinguish between Immigration and Customs Enforcement and New Haven Police. Really getting an understanding that this is a community-based model of policing, that there's a police general order in New Haven, right, that says you will not be deported for engaging with the police, and the police will not ask you about your status in the context of a criminal investigation or any level of engagement with law enforcement. Something that basic is really important for immigrant populations also to understand, and that city officials like you all are there to help and support them, and that the mayor is a mayor for all neighborhoods and all people who live in the city, irrespective of their status. All of those things are things that I think are really important when thinking about the kinds of services that the city could offer. But I would start off really talking to immigrants themselves to say, talk to us about what your needs are and what are the things that you found, particularly people who've been here for 2 to 3, 6 months, a year. What did you find most difficult accessing when you first came to New Haven?
Thank you so much, Kika. I really appreciate the sort of depth of response and the ideas that I think we can continue looking into. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair.
I'm gonna just make a general announcement. We do have an interpreter. If there's anyone in the audience that is in need of an interpreter, please raise your hand so we can address it.
Tenemos un intérprete que está presente. Si hay alguien en el público que necesita los servicios del intérprete, por favor de dejarnos saber para darle atención.
Thank
No
you.
response.
We'll continue making the announcement if more people come. Thank you.
Yeah, if you say in Spanish, 6 languages, I get
it. Any other questions from committee members for Kika? Alder Miller.
Just one more, if I may. I wondered if you could talk briefly about the issues in the workplace, wage theft and sexual harassment. I think we have a consensus we need to do something about it, something I get a large number of complaints about in my neighborhood, our neighborhood. And I just wonder if there are some examples perhaps that you can point to of places that have gotten it right, what it looks like to get it right, and how you think we should approach the issue.
Yes, Sarah, I will get you, I'm sorry, Alderperson Miller, I will get you a list of examples of model language for wage theft ordinances, but what I will say is increasingly around the country, there's been a recognition that wage theft is one of the most endemic problems amongst the undocumented population. And we're seeing more and more ordinances and laws passed around the country that specifically address the issue of wage theft. I think for New Haven, the first right step is to move forward with an ordinance, but I also think the moral heft of this body is also important, that each of you making sure that you are delivering the message to the businesses in your neighborhood, to the communities in your neighborhood, throughout the city, that New Haven is a city that does not and will not tolerate wage theft, will make a significant difference. Wage theft ordinances and ordinances around wage theft, laws around wage theft are nothing controversial, right? This is nothing that we would be innovating around or would be, taking significant risks around. I will get you that information after this evening. But what I will say is it does require teeth, right? An ordinance will make a huge difference because otherwise those who abuse immigrants think that it is something that they can get away with. And I can't tell you how, and I will say this, right? Unidad Latina en Acción, more than any other organization, knows the restaurants and the businesses where wage theft happens. And it has, I know this sounds terrible, but there are some restaurants that I no longer go to because I have heard of the terrible stories that we don't see, right? And some of these restaurants are restaurants that I loved. I frequented, I ate their food. I felt really good that I was supporting a local business until I heard the horrors of some of the things that happen in the kitchens. And I'll give you one quick example. I was at a local restaurant in Fairhaven, and I tipped the waitress with my debit card, and a colleague said to me, she's not going to see that money because in this restaurant, unless you tip in cash, the tips go to the owner of the restaurant. Right? That's one very small example, right? Here I was thinking, well, I am doing the right thing, right, by tipping this waitress in order to support her ability to make to have a livable wage, only to find out that this waitress, who was very good and very gracious and did a really good job, she was never going to see the money that I tipped her for, right? That's a very small example. The horrors are much worse. But the idea that New Haven will have a zero tolerance policy for wage theft is something that I would really encourage this body to advance.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any further questions from committee members? Seeing none, we can move on with the agenda. Kika, obviously you are welcome to stay on and listen if you choose so. I don't know if you have meetings or anything to get to this evening, but if you feel you need to, please don't hesitate.
I can stick around for another hour or so, and I'm really interested in this, so I will put myself on mute and listen.
Perfect, thank you. And thank you again for your time. At this time, we welcome the agencies to come up. I saw Sister Mary Ellen that is here with Apostle Immigrant Services, Junta, Samia. If there's any representative from any of the agencies with the city, please come forward and have a seat. And what we'll do is we'll have each of you present what your agency's services are. We will ask for name and address for the record. And we can, since Sister Mary Ellen seems to be here, we can start with Sister Mary Ellen.
Okay. And I don't even know that I'm going to actually go with this, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we heard from Kika Matos, and your services are important to the immigrants that come into this country, into the city. I guess the main thing is, what challenges do you face? How can the city better assist you? What programs do you offer? So again, I'll just remind, state your name and address for the record, and then you can go right into your,
Yeah.
yes.
My name is Sister Mary Ellen Burns. I'm here for Apostle Immigrant Services, and I'll use Apostle's address. I spend most of my waking hours there. It's 115 Blatchley Avenue in Fairhaven. And we provide two basic services. We provide food distribution out of the Fairhaven substation every week. And I know we started this under COVID. We thought, give it 9 months to a year, the problem will be over. Sadly, we were super mistaken, and we recently we've been giving it to a list of families every week. We had to now give it to them every other week because we had to create another entire list of families, and there's others who need. And I would echo what Kika's saying about people coming to the city. I think any of us are going to be talking or is going to be aware of people coming to the city, and particularly those coming from the southern border, who, as Kika noted, and as other organizations nationwide have noted, that although many of the clients we saw before coming from Central America, coming from Mexico, and then other places, when they came, even if their coming was irregular, they had somebody's phone number. People coming from some other countries, and two that come to mind are Venezuela and Ecuador. We have been getting a lot of Ecuadorians relative to the number that we get of people from anywhere. They do not always have that phone number. They do not always have that relative that would help them learn the ropes, so to speak, connect them. And so I think Keith's points about creating resources of that type are really well taken. So we have that. Our major service is immigration legal services. We've been open for 15 years. In this year, through, let's say, mid-November, our services touched on over 650 people. The majority of our clients do come from the city of New Haven, although we have a rather robust number from the surrounding towns, and in fact, some very outlying places in the state of Connecticut. The type of immigration legal services we focus on is really significant because that kind of somewhat controls who we're seeing, frankly. And are you from Iris? Yay, I'm glad Iris is here because their perspective is going to be very different, I would imagine. We focus on family-based immigration. So some of those 650 people that we're touching are still waiting for the opportunity to come into the United States. Their relatives here are petitioning for them. We also do a lot of DACA. We focus on citizenship. And the humanitarian types of relief we focus on are for young people who have experienced abuse, neglect, or abandonment, as well as people who are victims of domestic violence and other crimes, generally crimes of violence against the person, or threats of crimes of violence against the person. Although the majority of our clients do come from Latin America, we have in our 15 years had clients from over 100 countries, so obviously much beyond Latin America. And I would say at present, we still have a significant number of clients who come from the Middle East and from Africa, primarily sub-Saharan Africa, but not exclusively so. So those are our services. I would like to suggest an expansion of the view of who's an immigrant. We are largely talking, or have been focusing on, those who do not have legal status in the United States, and I know Kika is well aware of this, people who are released from our southern border are not, quote, illegal immigrants, although they are often without work authorization. So they are kind of in this terrible never land kind of thing, caught between. They have been allowed to enter the United States. They're not illegally in the United States. And I think in addition to the good services and that the city offers, I would like to see the discussion not only and not primarily identifying people by what they don't have, being legal status, and being by what they do have, which are the gifts and the talents and the fact that their presence here is keeping the United States from being a country that is losing population and aging even more rapidly than we are. Because of the populations that we serve, some of the challenges that we see may be a little different. And so two things that I did identify, because I knew we would have a really good conversation about the challenges of those who are undocumented, whether they somehow manage to slip in past CBP or overstay a visa, or are the people who are being released under the authorization of the government, but yet do not have the magic work authorization and the magic 10 digits of a social security number. So I would like to look at, just raise up a couple of things that maybe perhaps have a broader impact on immigrants. Because in addition to the variety of countries and the variety of languages, we have a Spanish interpreter here today. I would imagine my colleague from IRIS could tell you about a number of other languages that are prominent in our city, but I will lift up one that's Arabic. We have frequently had to try to hunt down Arabic translators. But also immigration status. There's a variety of people of different immigration statuses in our city, and I encourage the committee to keep that variety in mind, and both the gifts and the challenges that all those people bring in those variety of statuses. We are, as I mentioned, working a lot with people who have DACA. We have a much smaller population with temporary protected status, and we do see people who are paroled into the United States. All three of those things are by their nature temporary. So one of the things that is a challenge, and we this year are probably going to see between 80 and 90 young people to renew DACA. We are trying to, of course, interview them closely to see what they can do. Is there another status available to them? It is always a huge celebration when somebody moves from DACA to green card. But I will say the majority of those people do not have an immediate way of getting status of art, just the people that I've been seeing in the last few months. They are often highly educated, licensed for various professions, and also people with temporary protected status. That can change, and then they may not have any other way to get the magic green card. So the city and other more creative minds looking at what are ways we can help people legally incorporate in something such as a limited liability corporation, which many people who have green cards and US citizenship also utilize as a way of having an individual business. So that, for example, some of our clients who are in the health professions would not, if they could no longer work for a hospital corporation or another organization, could utilize their skills and licensing to still provide, for example, physical therapy using an LLC. I don't have the skill set, we don't have the skill set to teach people how to do that, but making that part of the city's toolkit that it can connect people with would be super helpful. Another area has to do with citizenship. Of course, citizenship is only available for those who have legal permanent residence. And one population in particular of those seeking citizenship or who would benefit greatly from citizenship that we encounter are often senior citizens, people with disabilities. Federal law prohibits people who are not U.S. citizens from getting supplemental security income. And the state of Connecticut, I believe, I'm not a benefits attorney, but I believe that many people who would otherwise qualify for SSI get some state grant that is much lower. That I know, that part I know. I know that there are some places that do have programs to seek out those who are in this category. It particularly affects senior citizens, and especially senior citizens who are more recently arrived in the United States. So came to the United States well into adulthood. And the reason I raise that is because it becomes exponentially harder to learn English, which is a requisite for citizenship for many people, until they've been here at least 15 years, which is a long time. Anything that the city could do to try to connect, particularly seniors, that the city could coordinate programs to highlight for seniors the ability to become a citizen, the ability to get waivers of that requirement of English, the ability to get waivers of the right now $725 fee to apply for citizenship would be great. And also any ways that the city could perhaps encourage medical personnel to entertain training from those who know about the immigration system so that they could assist their patients who would qualify for a waiver of the English requirement, so that they would be able to help them. This is a big challenge for us. We encounter generally elderly, but often others with principally mental health challenges that would make it very, very difficult, if not impossible, for them to master English and 100 questions about U.S. history and civics. There is a form that has to be filled out by a doctor, and that where the doctor is basically saying, this is my patient, this is their diagnosis, this is why somebody with this diagnosis is not going to be able to learn English and or learn all these questions. For whatever reason, doctors find this form difficult to fill out, and we will be trying to reach out to some of the providers that our less affluent clients go to the wonderful community health centers we have servicing our city, both of them, to see if maybe we can work with them to help the doctors learn how to fill out this form. Not to tell them how to fill it out in the sense of what they should say about the client's condition, but how to express it so that the client will then be able to attain that citizenship. It is of great benefit to the client and their families if their income can be increased in this way, well beyond all the other benefits of citizenship I don't have to lecture you all about. You all know them. But it's also a benefit to our city and our state to bring in additional federal dollars and to relieve the state from its payment of the frankly inadequate level, but better than nothing and better than many states do, for people who currently don't qualify for SSI. So it would be a great thing. Those are two suggestions of mine, and I second all of Kika's suggestions, which are excellent, and particularly that idea of a welcome center is something some of us were talking about prior to the convening of this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Mary Ellen. Any questions from committee members for Sister? Go ahead, Alder Miller.
Thank you very much for the information. I was thinking about the recommendation of the elderly programs for seniors. and wonder if you've made any effort to work with our city elderly services department so that they're aware and can disseminate it through the senior centers.
Truthfully not. COVID kind of ended a lot of our outreach stuff, but that's an excellent suggestion. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. Maybe through you, Mr. Chair, we could sort of collect that information and pass it on to that department.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. And that's probably another thing we should add to the manual that Kika was
Oh, yeah.
speaking on.
That's such an excellent idea. Yeah.
Any other questions for Sister Mary Ellen?
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, and thank you for coming tonight and talking about, the services that Apostle Immigrant Services offers. I know one of them that you mentioned was, you talked a little bit about sort of language and how, learning English oftentimes is a requirement for citizenship. My parents had to go to do the same thing to learn and take the classes to be able to learn. I'm just curious, do you know what other partners, like how available English, like affordable English lessons are like in the city, or can you maybe talk a little bit more?
Yeah,
about
actually,
your organization?
the city, one of the things that Apostle Immigrant Services decided we would not do is offer English language because there has been a wealth of resources. One of them, of course, is the Adult Education Department. I have to say, a couple of sisters who lived with me at one point were students at the Adult Education Department. Right upstairs from Apostle Immigrant Services is the Springs Learning Center, which offers one-on-one tutoring, which I think for some people is a little bit more of their comfort zone, and also forces them to talk, which sometimes larger classes don't. I believe that Junta is reigniting its ESL programs. I'm sure there are others I'm not aware of.
No, that's super helpful. Yeah, I think, super helpful to sort of get an idea of what's out there for folks who are, either trying to learn English, to become citizens, or, just learn English to be able to communicate and hear elsewhere.
And I should mention too, the libraries. The libraries often have, if not classes, conversation circles, which are very helpful too. Especially because some people, their work schedules don't allow them to do a 4 or 5 day a week class. Their kids are home, they can't go in the evening to a class or during the day because they're working. So the library complements that really well.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair.
Any other questions? Okay. And again, just state name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon, my name is Jacqueline Gonzalez. I'm a case manager at Junta for Progressive Action. Our address is 169 Grand Ave here in New Haven. So I'd like to just give a quick wrap on what we serve. So we'd like to say we do wrap around social services, a little bit of everything and then some. We help with public assistance benefits. We have a lot of partners, a lot of them that are here today that we collaborate with. If it's not something that we can do, we refer clients over to our partners. When I say public assistance benefits, I refer to SNAP, WIC, Husky, sometimes even SSI, SSDI. The reason why we do a little bit of everything is because for the longest time, and I'm sure Kika knows, is that we help cross that language, and now as we've seen with COVID, that technology barrier that a lot of people regardless of age are having a lot of difficulty with. For example, I would say one of them, for example, DSS, sometimes the documents that they send are in English, even though I look at a renewal form, I see that the client has requested a Spanish interpreter, but the form is in English, which I thought is pretty funny. And, one of the things we've been seeing a lot as well, and we've been helping with is applying for public housing, letting these people know what that's about, if they qualify, how they qualify. It's currently on hold right now, but we also help with rental assistance. It started off as, back in 2020 when we were
helping families that were affected as a result of COVID. At some point, we were also helping with utility assistance. We also provide youth programs that are free. Well, all of that we do is free. We have a Big Turtle Village Summer Camp, which is a really big program that is still active to this day. It opens up every summer for youth. We've also just opened up an after-school program for grades 2 to 6 at known as Big Turtle Village at Art Inc. at Atwater Senior Center. We also host a youth empowerment program. We receive volunteers year-round where they get an opportunity to interact with the community and help us, provide the services that we do. And like Sister Mary Ellen was mentioning, we also just opened back up our ESL classes. We've teamed up with Adult Ed in the past, and this year we're working with literacy volunteers. It's really great getting to see the students come in every morning, excited to learn. Makes me really happy to be a part of that. And regarding immigration, I want to give a little bit some numbers. This year alone, we've received 185 calls regarding questions about immigration, whether that be, do you have lawyers? I heard you have lawyers. This thing happened to me. Is it something I can qualify for regarding immigration? And like Kika mentioned, issues regarding workplace rights are unfortunately still very much active. For example, I know I had this one client a couple months ago that was applying for SNAP. He gave me his employment information. I take a look at the site. I asked him how much he was getting paid. He gave me a number that was where the state wage was probably 3 years ago. And I told him, do you know what the current state wage is right now? He said no. And I told it to him, and he just shrugged his shoulders. And I felt really terrible because he was the only one working in his home, and he knew that if he spoke up, he was going to lose that job. And I know more than ever now that it's really hard for people that happen to be undocumented to find jobs out there. When many of them that come here to this country and the state and the cities, all they want to do is get on their feet to help their families and help their kids. As case managers, me and my other coworker at this time have helped recorded at least 203 times regarding immigration, whether that be families that just recently arrived that got that big packet from ICE, giving them the instructions in English, what to do, where to report. They've been nice enough to attach at the very end of every packet a list of legal aid offices where they can go to. Yeah. And we help them, connect to those offices. Luckily, some of them happen to be here in New Haven. We do the change of address. We even offer them when we have available food and clothing donations, which is really great. But the tricky thing about helping with that packet is that sometimes they have questions regarding their rights, questions regarding, how they entered, saying, I want to apply for asylum. And I hear what they're telling me, and it doesn't sound like they qualify, or maybe it's something else that they're looking for, but they don't know the name of. And it feels really, I always feel stuck when I can't give them an answer, or I do give them an answer, and unfortunately, they don't like it. Or it's not something that they've never heard of. I had a client about 2 weeks ago come in with an employment application to this one job. I did my best to help her complete it, but I had to explain to her what a social security number was. And it just, every day you see a little bit of everything. And I would say one of the biggest challenges that we've had, I know in the past, Junta has had amazing lawyers, amazing paralegal staff that at this time aren't there. And I think that all the clients that I've seen, all the clients that my coworkers have seen, with a question regarding immigration, and it's been done in the past, we've held a couple clinics, we held a couple Q&As, Know Your Rights. Just 15 minutes of the lawyer's time would really ease the stress of some of these people's backs if they could just get a couple answers from them. But unfortunately, especially now, because there's been so many more people coming in, so many more cases, Some of these attorneys unfortunately, can't make the time to offer that pro bono help that they were before, or unfortunately can't make the time to come to our offices and visit. And we're always grateful when they do. And I think maybe putting more attention, maybe more funding into providing legal aid or finding out how to do pro bono aid to them would be really great help. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Sister Mary Ellen mentioned, help with lawyers, et cetera. I know Iris also provides services. Do you all communicate at all?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where, hey, I need an attorney, can you help me out, or?
There is a, I guess, coalition of nonprofit immigration legal service providers. We have a listserv, there's questions, et cetera, like 20 times a day. There's a meeting this morning that I missed. It's just a matter of numbers. And, I know Alder Marks can appreciate from one of her other hats, there just aren't enough lawyers for people to go around. So I think that emphasizes again Kika's point about universal representation in immigration matters. All these folks who are released are being released to go to immigration court ultimately. And if they have an asylum case, they have 1 year in which to file it, or else, with some exceptions, they've lost their chance at asylum. And so it's just a lack of resources, really. It's just I don't, our office does not do asylum because of the immense amount of resources it takes. New Haven Legal Assistance has several attorneys. Often their intake is closed because of the amount of time these cases take. Iris has several attorneys as well, yeah.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members?
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. I have one question actually. I know you mentioned like youth programming is a big part of like Junta. And I think like on that note, I wanted to quickly ask, and you mentioned you're a case manager, you often work with families as well. And so I know a big thing recently that I feel like we've started seeing, I grew up having friends here in New Haven where immigrant youth came here when they were 16, 17, 18, and kind of in similar boats with their parents, but also different boats because they were dealing with public schooling and figuring that out. But I was just wondering if you've come across any immigrant youth and what these like youth are kind of facing, whether it be something similar to what their parents are facing, or different challenges related to education or accessing college or something.
I would say we've been very lucky to work and always still connect to CT for a Dream that helps DACA students and undocumented students. The students that we've seen, at least to this point, for the Youth Empowerment Program, I myself do not know if they're undocumented. I don't make it a thing to ask regardless. But I will say, on a little bit of a personal standpoint, I have siblings that are in high schools here in New Haven that have mentioned that they have a lot more undocumented friends, I would say. And from what they've told me, sometimes they stick around a lot because that language barrier is very much there. They need help with everything because of that language barrier. And they're very lucky to have those friends there. It's not ideal because a lot of times they feel overwhelmed. When I was talking to them a couple nights ago, them feeling like, they feel young. Why are they, teenagers, and they are apologizing to them. I'm sorry, I'm always following you around. I'm sorry to do this. And, me having to talk to them that, you're really lucky to be able to help them. And let them know that there's help out there. And we, still connecting them to us in the event that they do want to spend some time out spending time with people that, you know, are somewhat of their culture too. But I'm more than certain that I think with time we'll start seeing, you know, more and more youth come to us for help. And for the Big Turtle Village program, I'd say when the date changes a little bit every year, but once we know that the program is going to start and we're going to start accepting enrollments, a lot of them we like to go to our clients first, let them know that this is out there, because many of them, you know, are working parents around the clock, day and night, and their kids don't get the opportunity to spend time out like their other counterparts. So we're really lucky to have that program there because we can take the kids out. It's a week long, all expenses paid for trip, and it's really nice getting to welcome them back after that trip. They'd smile all the way home.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, that was my only question, and I think just a couple things I wanted to add, because I know you mentioned, and Sister Mary Ellen also mentioned funding. I know I think maybe all of your organizations receive CDBG funding, or, you know, apply to the account, or, sorry, sister. But I encourage any organization to, you know, apply to that. You know, I had the privilege to chair and oversee that process this past year. And it's always a great opportunity to hear from organizations here the things that they're missing, that the city isn't funding or isn't fully funding. And I think it's always been a great opportunity to hear and have all the colleagues that serve on that joint committee really hear and potentially, you know, offer that funding to specific services, like, for example, legal aid. So just wanted to put that out there. But yeah, thank you so much.
Any other questions? Thank you. We'll move on to Iris.
Thank you so much. My name is Sami Niazai from IRIS, Integrated Refugee and Immigrant Services, 235 Nicole Street, New Haven. I mean, most of the services we provide, they already mentioned that. I will just provide some numbers let me tell you what we do. Basically, we have resettlement services, job assistance, case management, health and wellness, education services, and that we have the after-school program, summer learning school. I mean, that program, we have family literacy programs for families who are coming mostly from Middle Eastern countries with, you know, their family members at home. They have no formal education, not at all, especially in the past 2 years. We had a lot of the Afghan population during the Afghan crisis. So those programs, the education department is handling that. And so that's one of the things. We provide legal services, community engagement, and community co-sponsorship. So we have served almost this year, we are touching around 1,000 people. And last year, 600 and some members. These are just refugees and asylum seeker, and I don't have the undocumented numbers. You know, that's also 200 plus numbers usually. So we provide services. In the past 2 years, the Afghan crisis and the Ukrainian situation crisis that happened. A lot of people left the country and made it here. So the Afghan population who came, most of them were the one who supported the U.S. mission in Afghanistan. They were the forces, military forces, supported the U.S. forces there. But there was a huge challenge about the educational background there. So our legal department has been doing a lot for that. So we have a lot of attorneys on file. I personally manage the ambassador program, and also the Afghan Legal Project, working towards the special immigrant visas. So those who work for the U.S. government there, they were qualified for the special immigrant visa called on behalf of or for the U.S. government. Whoever has worked for a period of 1 year, they were qualified. But that takes time. It takes years. There is 153,000 people waiting. Just 153,000 people are dying every day just so they can get a response about this. When these people came here, they already were in the process where the U.S. in the camps, they receive all these letters that, yes, this is the confirmation you have worked for us. So we started working towards applying for some kind of legal status, or if they were having any of the family members, so we tried that way. So we tackle most of these cases from different way. And then whatever was left, so we started towards the asylum. So recently we have been receiving some asylum approvals. Usually, I mean, as much as I know, the asylum approval it would take 2 weeks or a month before, years ago. Then when these interviews started, I had the opportunity to be there. They said a month, then 2 months, then 3 months. We heard at some point they say we will answer you in 6 months, and we haven't heard in many cases up a year. So USCIS is moving very slow. Then the referral situation with the Afghan was only for 2 years when they made it. And so that was one of the challenges that we have to, again, apply for their referral. TPS, filing the documents. I have, like 100 pages of this paper that I prepared myself. I mean, I will always say that only USCIS has a contract with recycling company, I guess. I don't know what they do with these papers, so just a person give me their bank statement, all the, the documents, what they do with it. I mean, it was a lot of paperwork, so we did most of that, and we have few of the pro bono attorneys that work on these asylum cases for us. So these are the services we provide, and the numbers have been increasing for also the Afghan population coming to the south borders. In New Haven, we have, I would say, most of our cases around this 600 people of that year is 75–80% were Afghans speaking Pashto, and mostly in that 100 people of that is around 85% were Pashto speaker, 80 to 85, and the other were Dari speaker, Dari also Persian, Farsi, and so we serve clients recently coming from South Sudan, and we have clients coming from Congo, we have clients coming from Syria, Iraq. Most of these people have been waiting in a pipeline of refugee, so with the challenges we have right now, we are facing a lot is the affordable housing. And most of these people are not able to get, right now our clients are in hotels. Literally, I was coming out of the office, I saw our client, we were taking them to a hotel. So for a few days, they live in the hotel. So that there's a lot of costs involved there. We can't find housing. I mean, people are not comfortable, I guess, or we can't find it affordable. The first 90 days of the federal, that minimum amount we get to support them is really, so we need more funding towards the housing, if that could happen, or the affordable housing for these people to get opportunities. Most of these people who are here the past, I have been living in New Haven since 2015. I had a business here. I had 2 Popeye stores here at some point. So I think I have been in contact with a lot of refugees community here. So they're not citizens, they're a part of the community. They definitely want to be a part of the city here also. And but they don't see that, the opportunities for them, they are still living in they have no idea how to buy a house. They don't know that. They don't know how to get a public assistance from the housing or anything, or get a Section 8 or something like that. To be honest, I don't know too. It's something that the city could provide easy access in different languages as we talk. Yes, the challenge of interpretation and translation services. The past few months, our organization worked toward this, and now we're doing well with that. We ask a lot of volunteers and people that work different languages, and so these are the issues that the affordable housing. The housing situation is something that if we could get some support, that would be great. So much.
Questions from committee members? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for all of the work that all 3 of you and all of your organizations do so valiantly. I heard at least two of you speak to current numbers. I think I heard the number 1,000 from Iris. I think I heard Sister Mary Ellen say number 650. I heard 650. Can you just speak to numbers and trends with numbers? What would you have predicted? And I don't want to put you on the spot. Pre-COVID numbers, what happened during COVID, current, where do you see sort of the trend, and where do you think we're going with numbers in terms of populations we should be expecting to serve in New Haven over the next 5 years?
Well, one of the factors of our numbers is our cases come in the door and it takes a long time for them to go out. And that has something to do with COVID, I think. And the waiting times, and my colleague here referred to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, are just, I don't want to say ridiculous, but they are just longer and longer and longer. And I think that that is still an effect of COVID, of difficulties in hiring. Frankly, the federal government has the same problem all the other employers are having, finding people. And so that's one factor for us. I think from what it's the numbers of people coming in through the southern border. We have, most of the clients we're working with, did not come through the southern border in the last few years. A lot of our youth that we're working with for special immigrant juvenile status have. But the majority of our clients, we're trying to get them in another way or whatever. But that is something that we do have some clients sometimes coming, or people who wish they could be our clients, and we say, we don't have the skill set really to help you with this, nor the bandwidth, frankly. And we could acquire the skill set, and we don't have the bandwidth to help you with this. We refer them to Iris, we refer them to Siri, which is not located in New Haven County, but nonetheless, Connecticut's a small state, I can travel there. But I think that that's something we're continuing to see, and it is a varied population, as noted, that now we have Afghans coming through the southern border. And we do have an Afghan population in our area because of people who are resettled by Iris, and people are going to come to, as the impression we have is it's a lot of folks from, there's always people from Central America, Honduras, Guatemala, principally in New Haven, but increasingly, what we're hearing is Ecuador, that it's just a lot of their countries financially collapsing and a lot of extraordinarily violent, and I think we're just going to see that continue. I think also, I don't see that the legal situation for immigrants in general is going to get any better. So the plea that we have now, I think, all made for consideration of funding to represent people in immigration court is something that will only increase. And I would say, in my small experience in doing this, it is really difficult to get pro bono attorneys to take a pro bono immigration case. They last a long time. It's not like taking a pro bono. I mean, like I used to do housing. A pro bono housing case in New York City would not take years and years and years, but an immigration court case will. So you really need to have people who are compensated to do it, and it's difficult. There was a massive Afghan asylum pro bono effort, and I participated in something like that many years ago when it was Haitians. All the cases would be somewhat similar, and that was people who were taking those were not immigration lawyers, but
the majority of the cases that would come in would not be amenable to something like that.
The numbers you said during COVID, we served around 180 to those numbers in that 2020. So, but the year later, the Afghan crisis happened in 2021 in August. So people were still in camps, and it got into 2022, and then in the February month, the Ukraine crisis happened. So those numbers were increased. The Ukrainian population is the challenge is the language, education. I mean, they have very good technical skills. That's something that I personally know. I mean, they have contributed to the economy. The Afghan population itself, there was this report, $1.7 billion they have contributed to the US economy. Around $286 million. This was around the 36% of them were, just the survey was done. $286 million they have paid in taxes. 28% of them were master degree holders, because those who work for the US government, they were chosen, you know, I mean, some of them, just only those soldiers who made it out, they were people with no educational background, but other than almost 28% of that was master degree holder, and on average, 36% of those people were making an average of 58,000 income. So they have been contributing. It's not that the immigrant does not contribute to the economy. The Ukrainians, they are very good with tech, really is. I mean, the IT industry, they have been great at that. So those numbers have changed from COVID because we couldn't provide as much services, also the federal government. And you said that, I mean, the USCIS may have some challenges. I mean, yes, there is challenges with hiring. I mean, they have the labor. But there are certain things, I mean, as a person here, so if I could, you know, with the Afghan situation, when they give the 2 years of the parole status to all those people, with one, I don't know if it's possible, I don't know too much about it. I mean, with one executive order, this could have been fixed. We already gave it, but we were just sending papers to the recycling company. We were just sending papers. I mean, this could have been fixed, you know. I mean, all these people were vetted, they were processed in all these camps. Why do we need it? Because the USCIS could not respond on time to their asylum interviews, so it was their responsibility that they could have simply made an executive orders. You know what, we cannot reach, and we're gonna fix it with an executive order or something. I mean, I don't know if it's possible or not, but we could. I mean, the USCIS could have shifted their, you know, focus on something else. So numbers have increased, and we are seeing a lot of people. I mean, the Afghan population who's coming down from southern border, the route they are taking is, I mean, Brazil. I mean, Iran, because they ran away from Afghanistan. They are scared. These are the people they were left behind. But when they enter, usually they're getting the code date. Code date in 2027, 2026. You guys see that all the time. 2025, I mean, most of the undocumented immigrants who are coming, that's the code date they're getting. So, which is, I don't know how. So these are people who usually have documents or association with the US government. So they may be able or eligible to get a legal status in the country. So there has been increase in the numbers coming from that route.
Madam Chair, may I just ask if Representative Hunter, particularly interested if you have the perspective of the grassroots perspective in terms of the influx of migrants that we know are happening at the southern border. Are we seeing influxes here in New Haven, and how would you describe those numbers and trends?
Certainly. So I myself, I was working the front desk all of last year. And from the summer of last year, this is from personal account, I didn't read those numbers, but from personal account, I started to see a little bit more than regular undocumented individuals coming in. Most of them would say when they cross the border, so that I think that's what you're referring to. And then slowly by then, up until today, that number has I know has doubled. Specifically, like Sister Marianne said, from Ecuador, Guatemala, Venezuela, Chile even. We've also seen some Turkish documented individuals that we funny enough, met at New Haven Adult Ed Center. We had done a presentation there. They came over. So even though the staff there speaks English and Spanish, we say we're open to everyone because luckily we have these little computers and we use what was it, Google Translate. But yes, I absolutely agree and can say for a fact that the numbers have doubled, especially with Central and Southern American people that have been coming in.
Thank you for your answer and thank you so much for your service to communities. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you for being here this evening. You have enlightened us with a lot of information, and it sounds like we have a lot of work to do. But thank you very much. I know that there are other agencies as well, so you're welcome to stay and listen to the other agencies as well, or, you know, we'll definitely, this is a conversation that will continue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe we have a representative from Semilla. Can come on up. Good evening.
Good evening. And before you begin, I just want to announce, because I saw some new faces, we do have interpretation here, so if anyone is in need of an interpreter, please. Thank you. Also, I want to note for the record that I did see Alder Marchand, who popped in and then popped out, but I just wanted to recognize that he was here.
Thank you. Alder. You may begin.
Thank you. Good evening, dear members of the Board of Alders Immigration Committee and community members. My name is Fatima Rojas. I came to New Haven almost 20 years ago. I live on 49 Livingstone Street.
It's good.
In the second floor in New Haven, Connecticut. If somebody wants to bring tamales, I'm welcome. And so, as I was saying, I came to this country 20 years ago, full of sand and needles from the desert. And I am an organizer with the Semilla Collective of New Haven since its formation. So let me tell a little bit of the Semilla Collective, and I will continue to speak about the challenges that we face. So the Semilla Collective of New Haven is a grassroots collective formed in the fall of 2019 to fight side by side with immigrant and working families with the firm conviction to work through consensus, transparency, and dignity for our different original traditions and culture of the immigrant community. We are a diverse group of immigrants and immigrant allies acknowledging and respecting the fact that we all live on Quinnipiac land in New Haven. And we are using our collective imagination to build socioeconomic empowerment for New Haven immigrants and beyond. During the pandemic, our immigrant community were excluded from the COVID-19 relief efforts. And we in the Semilla Collective defeated that exclusionary system by creating a solidarity project that addressed pandemic-driven unemployment and food insecurity in Greater New Haven, Connecticut. We raise thousands of funds and redistribute wealth through boxes of food we call la cajita de comida to more than 600 families in New Haven. We also distributed envelopes of cash to undocumented community that, as I said, were excluded from the essential government aid. Through that process, we built collective power through political advocacy for immigrant justice by fostering cooperative businesses in our communities. As a result of all that work, we created the Tortilleria Co-op, a cooperative that is grassroots immigrant-led cooperative that rescued the ancestral process of nixtamalización to create a dough or called masa, to make handmade tortillas with non-GMO fair trade corn. And our vision in the tortilleria is to dream to be a tortilla factory that inspire a culture of cooperativism, where the food we offer is prepared honoring ancestral traditions and promoting good living in our community. Our mission is also to offer high-quality corn tortillas and masa, rescuing our culture and traditions. We create jobs with dignity in our cooperative and inspire others with solidarity, and we work together to a better world. I want to say that one of the many challenges that we had creating this cooperative is we took us almost 1 year to get the permits from the city, from the state, and it's unbelievable that until this time, people in our city in New Haven are not comfortable with accents like mine, that I'm proud. I used to be ashamed of my accent. Now I'm proud. It took us a long time to understand the permit processes and to receive the rejection of like, I don't understand what you are saying. Can you repeat yourself? And sorry, can you have somebody else that can come and and speak with us, so on and so forth. So finally, we were able to get our permits like a couple of months ago, and we are operating in the Q house in a shared kitchen. We're still looking for a place where we can operate, but we are now finally selling dough, masa, and recently making tortillas. So that's one of the branches of the Semilla Collective. And I should not say branches. The 3 branches. I always think in our Semilla Collective as a 3. And another of our arms or our branches in this tree is for the label in which theft cases. So in Semilla Collective, our first approach when the immigrant community get close to us and ask for advice or share the unfair and the horrors of working under unfair labor conditions. So we take the first approach, of course, to hear our immigrant community, the workers, to share what are their rights, to walk with them in a process where they can feel, first of all, safe, where our people can understand what are the rules in this country that are totally different in our countries. And then we always believe in developing the leadership skills that people have. Everybody has leadership skills. And we create together a strategy in how, not us, but the people would like to approach the different type of cases, depending on the situation. We have theft wage, we have sexual harassment, and so on and so forth. So then what we do is we approach to, if it's a local restaurant or if it's any factory owner, we approach with faith, good faith, in good faith with the local owner. We want to first build a relationship if the owner is willing to build a relationship. And we try to solve that situation first, we call it like on the ground, right? And if the owners or responsible for the violation are cooperating with us, we continue the dialogue. Of course, if they close and shut down their doors, we start escalating our issues. So that's the approach that we have. We have had some successes in doing that approach. And one of the things that we do not believe is on empowering our immigrant community, because we believe that our immigrant community already is powerful. So all what we need, I remember myself when I was getting paid $4.50 when the minimum wage was $17, like almost 20 years ago. The only thing that I needed was to know, like, no, you are an immigrant, you are a worker here, you have the right to have minimum wage. And once I learned that, I was like, oh, hey, well, that was a kick that opened so many doors. So that's what we believe, that our community is powerful already. What we need are the information, their resources, and for our community to know their rights. One of the challenges that we face in doing this work is, as the people that were here before, is there is a lot of cases, and for the labor support, we work with New Haven legal assistants. They are super awesome. They are always ready to hear, but they are also like they have so many cases, and particularly after the pandemic, housing cases. That right now immigration cases are kind of there are not enough space for them. And that's one thing that we can figure out together, right? Like how we can create a center or lawyers that are willing to work with groups like Semilla and other groups in Connecticut, where, in New Haven, I'm sorry, I want to expand already, but in New Haven, where we can get all these tools and representations in court. And in that way, we are not pulling out of our pockets to pay some lawyer fees and so on and so forth. Another branch that we have in the Semilla Collective is, we are busy, is that we are part of the Husky for Immigrants campaign, which is a Connecticut or a statewide effort, coalition that is fighting for access to healthcare for the immigrant community. And I'm so excited to say that after so many rallies, after so many demonstrations, after so many support letters and public hearings, and the list continues, we won the expansion for the eligibility for Connecticut Hospice, the Medicaid program, to undocumented individuals age 12. That was a huge step, and at the same time, I myself was so disappointed because I thought that at least we was gonna get 18, but no. So we also won the prenatal and postpartum care that I myself, when I got my kids, I didn't have that. It was just the last visit and adios, Fatima. So, and we are continuing to fight because no one should be denied health care and a chance at survival because of immigration status or at the year that they were born. It's a long road, we know that, but we are in it, and we are not going to stop until we get access to healthcare for all immigrants regarding of age. So what the city can do about this, right? This is a statewide effort, but I feel that the mayor can send letters of support. Right now, we are going to try to push more the Governor Lamont. So a letter of support from the mayor, a statement from the Board of Alders can say, hey, this is a healthcare is a human right. And I have one of my dearest friends in the collective that I can tell that is like $80,000 in debt for medical because of a chronic condition that she has, and I just feel that is clear ways. And like in the past, I knocked some doors, and the response that I got is, "Oh, that's a statewide issue," but no, like stuff like this, like letters, statements, can really push forward and can really like make a difference in our immigrant community. So one of another project that we have in the collective, and for now this is the last one, is that in the collective we believe in La Alegre Rebeldía from the Zapatist movement, which is in our immigrant community started to learn some jarocho, myself included this year. And son jarocho is a traditional style of music originating from Veracruz, Mexico. The closest translation to the word son jarocho today is Veracruz sound. The genre, it's a music led by small 8-string instruments called jarana style of music, and it's an adaptation of different cultures, Spanish, indigenous, and African. So the song that we use in Semilla, it's for the struggle, it's for our movement, it's for our immigrant community. It's another vehicle that delivers powerful messages through music during challenging times. And so we it was powerful because we were able to compose verses for like the Husky Coalition, the Healthcare for All. We just came up with a long workshop creating a song for the immigrant community, sharing our stories, right? And going through the process of really like trying and going through what it means to be an immigrant in this country. So I will be, stay tuned, I will be sharing that, we'll be sharing that soon. So, what I was saying is that it would be great that we can form, as Kira mentioned, in some other, like a group that meets on a regular basis with the city of New Haven, because this is awesome. This is an opportunity tonight to share all these, like the other organizations. But if we don't do this in a regular basis, it happens what happened with the municipal ID card, right? Like today is excitement, today is like a taking notes, listening, but then 3 months or 4 months ahead, everything goes through the cracks. So that would be something that Semilla will be totally interested in forging for me and promoting. And also access to a more welcoming process to create cooperatives here in New Haven. The Semilla Collective held its third annual Festival of Resistance, a festival where we share all the different struggles that are going on during the year. And one of the things that we do is we do support local economy. We do have a large number of women, men that sell food from their houses. And a lot of people ask, right, like, oh, but why they don't get the permit, right? Why they don't get the licenses to be able to? It's just a nightmare to get the license. And you will get like a total multi cultural menu from all these different vendors, if they become vendors one day. In the meantime, we are supporting them. They come to the festival with their food. And they sell their food at the event. And if the food that is left, the Semilla pays for whatever. If people bring 100 tacos and they only sell 50, Semilla will pay for the other 50. And in that way, it's a way to support the local economy. But it would be great to, like, all these people want to have a permit. It would be great to create, like, I know that there is the small business initiative, right? So it would be a matter of like dreaming together how we can make sure that people also have their licenses and are welcome in a very challenging environment. And also language is another. I know that people mention about language, and I was just thinking a few minutes ago, like maybe hearings like these, it will attract people or more people if we do it reverse. Let's do it in Spanish with interpretation to English. It feels totally different. Even myself, that I consider myself bilingual, when I go through in my own language, I can express myself way better and I feel integrated. So it's just a little seed left on a semilla for future opportunities. I'm not saying for everything, but can you imagine? Like, I bet that we will have more people announcing that the meeting is going to be in Spanish, translated into English. I feel that might make a huge difference. And also, I know that the city, I've seen the city's efforts in hiring more diverse people, but I feel that that effort needs to be taken more into account, because if we go back again with the small businesses, we dealt only with people that speak English, and some of them not so welcoming. So I just feel that that's a clear issue there that I feel that is doable. Another, just the last example that I'm gonna give, like a clear way in how the city can support the immigrant community. Like right now, at this very moment, there is a bipartisan group of senators that are negotiating a deal to pass a supplemental funding bill with funding for Ukraine, Israel, and the border in exchange for extreme permanent changes to USA immigration and asylum law. One of the main Democratic senators that are engaging in negotiations with the Republicans, it's our own Senator Chris Murphy. This is unacceptable. Right now, we are sending letters, we are making phone calls, and it would be great if, like, the city can write a letter to Senator Murphy, like saying that, I mean, this is definitely like going to be a disaster for asylum seekers and for people in the border. It's just, I was just hearing what Sister from Apostolic Services was saying about the asylum seekers, and so this is going to be like almost impossible. I mean, for people that are looking for asylum. So, so yeah. So that's how you wanna just say thank you for your patience. Thank you for being here, and let's work together. Caminemos juntos.
Thank you, Fatima. I'll ask if any colleagues on the committee have any questions.
Thank you for being here and for your services. So where do we buy these tortillas?
Oh yeah, I can send the link. We do have, we are on Instagram and Facebook, and we do have, we are taking orders every Thursday. Right now we are selling más in tortillas, nixtamalizadas, and with non-GMO corn. That is fair trade.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for asking.
Alder Miller.
Thank you very much for everything you do and for coming to share with us tonight. One question I have just really practically is in terms of the process you went through and the challenges you faced on the co-op. I think it would be helpful if you could detail for us in writing so that we can share it with staff. So really specifically, where were the barriers and what would you have liked to see different so that we can try to really work through those specific issues and see what we can get fixed. I think the point to have Spanish speaking and other languages in the office is very obvious, but there may be other things that are just harder to understand. So that would be very helpful if you could just detail for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I will detail that, and I will send it to
the co-chairs.
Oh, okay.
Or to staff.
Okay.
Yeah, to staff.
Okay, no problem. I will do that, definitely.
Oh, and just to add on to that, I think if you could also maybe add some of the challenges that, you know, folks who sell out of their homes. I know a lot of, I've bought from people who like sold out of their homes, and it's good food. But I'm also curious as to how, you know, what those challenges are for those people that are selling homes, but also want to become, you know, vendors and be able to operate something like that. So if you could also include that.
Yeah, I can definitely include that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Thank you.
We're going to do another reminder about the sign-up sheet. If anyone here is interested in signing up to testify publicly, they may do so in the back. But now we have John Lugo from BoA. So. If you could, you can feel free to move the microphone if you need to.
Sí. Los miembros de este comité del Consejo Municipal, buenas noches.
Good evening.
members of this committee.
miembros de este comité.
Mi nombre es John Jairo Lugo
My name is Jorge Lugo,
y soy miembro residente de la ciudad de New Haven desde 1991.
and I have a member of the city of New Haven, a resident since 1991.
Vivo en el 276 de la calle Huntington,
I live at 1276 Huntington Street
en el área de New Holbrook.
in the area of New Albany.
Soy director y miembro de fundador de Unidad Latina en Acción.
I am the member and founder of Unidad en Acción.
Fue la primera organización de inmigrantes indocumentados en el estado de Connecticut.
This was the first organization of undocumented immigrants in the city.
Nuestra organización es miembro.
State of Connecticut.
Nuestra organización es miembro de la Red Nacional de Jornaleros
And our organization is a member of the journal workers
y de la Alianza Nacional de Trabajadoras Domésticas.
and the Domestic Alliance of Domestic Workers.
Somos la organización que impulsó los cambios para que New Haven y Connecticut
We are the organization that pushed some changes in Connecticut, in New Haven, Connecticut,
para que estuvieran en el mapa de la lucha por los derechos de los migrantes.
so that it could be in the map of the struggles for immigrants.
Todo eso a través de la organización de la gente en la calle.
And all of this is from the organization is in favor of the people out in the streets.
Les quiero agradecer que estén organizando este taller,
I wish to thank you for having this workshop.
ya que sé que es importante que se escuche a una comunidad,
It's very important to have a community heard,
ya que es parte fundamental de esta ciudad.
being that it's a fundamental part of this city.
Venimos de todos los rincones de Latinoamérica
We come from all corners of Latin America,
y muchos vinieron para quedarse,
and many came here to stay.
ya que sus hijos nacieron acá
Being that their children have been born here,
y sus negocios están establecidos en esta ciudad.
and their businesses are established in this city.
También recordamos que en las últimas audiencias
We also do remember that in the last hearings,
se nos ha impedido el derecho a hablar
the right to speak was prohibited.
y es una vergüenza en una ciudad que se hace llamar santuario
And that's an embarrassing to a city that calls itself to be a sanctuary.
aunque este organismo es el mismo que lo ha impedido.
Even though this organism is the same one that has allowed it.
Ya que se ha negado a que oficialmente la ciudad, en sus leyes locales,
Since the city has refused to follow their local laws.
¿tú sabes traducir?
Perdón?
Tú no estás traduciendo bien.
He says the interpreter is not interpreting properly. ¿Desea que yo lea ahí? Would you like
Ya,
me to read
por
it?
favor.
Thank you. The interpreter is going to proceed to do simultaneous interpretation or sight interpretation. The witness seems to be reading from a document in Spanish, and this interpreter will do the sight interpretation from Spanish into the English.
Can I just interrupt one second? Can you just move the microphone a little
Yes.
closer, just so others can hear?
Of course, thank you.
And Jessica, this is out.
¿Dónde se quedó?
Aunque este organismo
Even though this organism is in itself has impeded it, since it has refused to allow the local laws as an official city and to declare it publicly, that New Haven officially calls itself to be a sanctuary city.
y nuestra participación comienza con este punto
And our participation starts with this point,
que acabé de hablar.
of which I have just spoken of.
Cuando el actual alcalde llegó al poder, llegó con la idea de trabajar de la mano con la comunidad migrante y no lo ha hecho.
When the the mayor took power, he came with the idea that he was going to work hand in hand with the community, with the immigrant community, which he has not done.
Okay. Reclamamos que el documento de identidad fue el que puso a New Haven en el mapa de la ciudad que lucha por los inmigrantes.
Our claim is that the document, the ID document that was placed in the city of New Haven put us in the map of the cities that fight in favor of the immigrants.
Que se reactive realmente.
And for it to really be reactivated.
Creemos que la mayoría de nuestra gente no lo posee.
We believe that most of our people do not have possession of it.
Eso debido a la falta de incentivos que sí se tenían en el documento original.
And that is because of the lack of incentives that were there in the original document.
La falta de promoción no ayuda a las nuevas familias que semanalmente se están estableciendo en esta ciudad.
The lack of promoting it does not help the new families that are weekly coming to be established in this city.
La falta es una justicia en el idioma la falta de justicia en el idioma sigue siendo un gran problema.
The lack of justice in the language continues to be a big problem.
No solamente para los latinos, sino que ya lo decía el compañero atrás, que también se deben traducir en otras lenguas.
And not only for the Latin people, but also according to what the person in the back was saying, it is also in other languages.
En una ciudad donde la gran mayoría habla español, que en las reuniones de la Junta de Educación no haya traducción, no ayuda a la integración que se espera a la gran cantidad de familias que llegan a esta ciudad.
In a city where the minority speak Spanish at the meetings and at the board of education and don't have any translations to help them to be able to integrate and to await this amount of families that continue to come into the city.
Un problema que seguimos hablando recurrentemente es el robo salarial.
And the problem that we continue to talk about, which continues to occur, is the income theft.
Y ponemos, por ejemplo, si alguien en la ciudad se roba un pan para calmar su hambre, esa persona la van a acusar de robo.
And let's say, for example, that if a person was to go out in the city and steal a bundle of bread, that person will be charged with robbing and stealing.
Pero si esa persona se le ha robado el salario después de trabajar semanas haciendo un techo,
but if that person is to steal the income of a 1 week's working while building a roof,
esa persona no podrá ir a la policía a levantar cargos a la persona que lo robó.
that person is not able to go to the police and file charges against the person that stole it.
Se le dirá que tiene que ir al departamento de trabajo.
Maybe they tell him that they have to go to the Department of Labor.
Pero ese departamento de trabajo no tiene suficientes agentes.
But that Department of Labor does not have enough agents in it.
Su caso no podrá tomar hasta 2 años para ser investigado o resuelto.
This person's case may not be resolved. It might take maybe 2 years or more to have a resolution.
Si no es que se cierra por cualquier razón que nunca se le explicará a la víctima.
If not, they'll just close it without no reason at all, with no explanation to the victim.
¿Por qué no utilizar las herramientas legales de la ciudad?
Why not use the tools, the legal tools of the city?
Para que los ladrones de salario no puedan tener la licencia para funcionar en ella.
So that those that steal the salary and the income are not able to obtain the necessary licenses for them to be able to work.
Pero que la policía solamente actúe contra los activistas.
But for the police to act only against those activists.
O arresten a los activistas.
or to have the activists arrested,
y no contra los ladrones de salario, no es un buen mensaje.
and not against those those that rob the income, then that's not a good message.
Y la impunidad se queda en lugares,
And then
in the impunity,
the impunity then remains in different places,
como Millas Restaurant o Goodfellas Restaurant, por ejemplo.
like Milla's restaurants and Goodfellas restaurant, as an example.
Día Latina en Acción ha recibido este año por lo menos 300 nuevas personas.
Unidad Latina in Acción has received at least 300 new people this year.
Personas y familias que buscan en muchos casos pedir asilo político.
People and families that in many cases are looking to seek political asylum.
Obtener un abogado gratis es casi imposible.
To be able to get a free lawyer, it's almost impossible.
Solo en algunos casos podrán ser tomados, en muy pocos casos podrán ser tomados por las agencias que dan ese tipo de ayuda.
Only in very small cases they are able to take those cases by the very little agencies that do exist and that we have.
Pero la mayoría se verán enfrentados a abogados que les cobrarán cantidades imposibles de pagar ya que no tienen trabajo.
But the majority will have to face some lawyers that will charge them large amounts of money, which is impossible for them to pay because they don't have a job.
¿Por qué la ciudad no puede ayudar, al igual que lo hace la ciudad de Nueva York, en una representación universal?
Why can't the city be able to help, just like the city of New York does it, by a universal representation?
Porque la ciudad no tiene, ¿por qué la ciudad no tiene una oficina para migrantes?
Why is it that the city does not have an office for immigrants?
Que se la hemos pedido a la ciudad desde el 2003.
Which have been requested to the city since 2003.
Cuando empezamos los diálogos para hacer New Haven una ciudad más amigable con los migrantes.
When we began to have conversations, to have a new city, to have New Haven be a friendly city with the immigrants.
Que cuando una familia llegue a nuestra ciudad se le ayuda a navegar acá.
So that when one family arrives to our city, they get help to navigate around here.
Ayuda con trabajos, busca de apartamentos, educación, salud.
Help with work, looking for an apartment, education, health.
En las últimas audiencias en las que no nos dejaron participar,
In the last hearings in which we were not allowed to take part in,
y de nuevo se nos coartó el derecho a expresar nuestras ideas,
and once again, our right to be able to express ourselves were stepped on.
pedíamos que nuestra gente debería tener el derecho a ser parte de las diferentes comisiones que gobiernan la ciudad.
We were asking for our people to be allowed to have the right to be a different part of the commission of the city.
Si aceptan nuestros impuestos
If you take in our taxes
y se utilizan para el funcionamiento de la ciudad,
and those are used for the function of the city,
de la misma forma nuestra voz debería ser tenida en cuenta
likewise our voice should be taken into account
en la mejor gobernanza de ella.
in the best way to govern it.
Ahora, otro punto. En una economía donde como inmigrante se vuelve más difícil sobrevivir,
Another point, in an economy in which for the immigrant becomes very difficult to survive,
levantar restricciones para las ventas callejeras se convierte en algo imperativo.
to be able to establish restrictions for the sales in the streets becomes something that is imperative.
Nuestra comunidad tiene históricamente ideas creativas para proveer elementos culturales
Our community has historic ideas and creative ideas to provide cultural elements,
ya sea en la comida o en los utensilios necesarios para sentirnos más cercanos a nuestras raíces.
whether it's for food or through necessary tools so that we may be able to feel closer to our own roots,
o para que los nativos de acá de la ciudad conozcan más de nuestras culturas.
or for that those that are natural from here, from the city, are able to have better knowledge of our own culture.
El Social Security no debe ser más una restricción.
Social Security should no longer be a restriction.
La ciudad de Nueva York es un ejemplo en ello.
The city of New York is an example of that.
Otro punto, las ideas que ustedes buscan en este comité deberían venir directamente de la gente.
Another point, the idea is that you are searching in this committee should come directly from the people.
De la gente afectada.
From the people affected.
¿Cómo buscar los formatos del pasado? ¿O cómo utilizar los formatos del pasado?
And how to use the formats of the past.
Como por ejemplo, audiencias públicas en las escuelas.
For example, public hearings at the schools.
Para que más personas participen en ellas.
So that more people can participate in them.
Audiencias en el pasado que se celebraron en la escuela Fairhaven o en la iglesia Santa Rosa de Lima son las que llevaron, por ejemplo,
the hearings that in the past were held at the school in Fairhaven Middle School or at the Santa Rosa de Lima Church.
Son las que llevaron, por ejemplo, que en el 2006
those were the ones that that brought on, for example, that in 2006
se pasara la ordenanza general que obliga al Departamento de Policía a no colaborar con inmigración.
Then it was passed that an ordinance, a general ordinance, that the police department was forced not to cooperate with the immigrants.
Esto, por ejemplo, sigue siendo una ordenanza
For example, this continues to be an ordinance
del Departamento de Policía
from the police department,
y no una ley de la ciudad.
and not a law from the city.
Ejemplo de ciudades que sí lo han hecho es, por ejemplo, Hartford.
And examples of cities that have done that is Hartford.
La realidad que vivimos actualmente es que este país se aleja más de una reforma migratoria.
The reality of it all is that we really are living in this country much farther away from a reform for immigration.
Y actualmente está en el Senado una conversaciones para hacer más difíciles las leyes para solicitar el asilo político.
And currently in the Senate, there are being conversations about making it a lot more difficult laws to be able to request for political asylum.
Nuestro propio senador Chris Murphy es el negociador por parte del Partido Demócrata.
Our own Senator Chris Murphy, he is the negotiator on the Party for the Democrats.
Y sospechamos firmemente que no va a ser el campeón de los migrantes.
And we firmly suspect that he will not be the winner for immigrants.
Sería de gran ayuda que la Junta de Concejales de la ciudad
It would be of great help if the board of alders of this city
hicieran un llamado para que Murphy se ponga del lado de la gente.
make a call for Murphy to be on the people's side.
Y no permita más que los Estados Unidos se alejen de las leyes que rigen el proceso de asilo político.
And not to allow that the United States goes farther away from the laws that govern for the political asylum.
Que fue creado después de la Segunda Guerra Mundial para enmendar los errores de no dar asilo político a las personas que huían del Holocausto nazi.
Which was created after the Second World War in order to be able to amend the errors that were made by the Holocaust, the Nazi Holocaust.
Además de que los Estados Unidos deben respetar las leyes internacionales que protegen a personas que solicitan asilo político.
And plus, the United States should be able to respect the international laws that protect the people looking for political asylum.
volviendo al tema de la realidad actual,
And coming back to the reality, current reality,
es que hay una gran posibilidad de que Trump sea el nuevo presidente de los Estados Unidos.
is that there is a big possibility that Trump becomes the president of the United States.
Y esa realidad obliga a que New Haven
And that reality forces New Haven
a que haga todo lo posible para que nuestra comunidad
to do everything possible so that our community
se sienta verdaderamente acogida en este lugar.
can really feel that they are being welcome in this city.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Muchísimas gracias. I'll ask if any committee members have any questions.
Gracias. Me pregunto a ver si alguien tiene alguna
No, gracias. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias. Thank you. I'll now, at this time, ask representatives from the city to come on up.
We have Corporation Counsel Pat King, we have the Health Department, Maritza Bond, Director of New Haven Department of Community Resilience, Carlos Sousa Lombardo, and CSA Eliza Halsey.
Yeah.
Thank you for your patience and for being here tonight. We heard a lot of information regarding the different agencies and some of the challenges that they face, as well as suggestions, et cetera. So, if we can start with Corporation Counsel with anything you want to add, the challenges that maybe we have with some of the requests that were made this evening, dealing with also state statutes, et cetera. So again, thanks for being here. And as a reminder, just state your names and address for the record, please.
Sure. Pat King, Corporation Counsel, 32 Vista Terrace in New Haven. Well, I can talk a little bit about the city's ability under the law to do some of the things that I think we all recognize would be helpful to the immigrant community. And as you probably know, the city is allowed to do only what the state will allow us to. So normally what we look for is some enabling legislation from the state that allows the city to take certain actions, enforce our own ordinances, make our ordinances, what we can regulate and what the state regulates. And if the state, as is said in a lot of legal opinions, occupies the field in a particular area, then the city really isn't allowed to regulate that same activity. And this is the issue that comes up when we talk about wage theft enforcement, primarily, because that field, if you will, is occupied by the State Department of Labor. So labor theft, wage theft complaints are reported to the police. Police refer them generally to the State Department of Labor, which is in charge of investigating them and bringing whatever charges need to be brought. They're brought in state criminal court and they're enforced there. So the city really doesn't have the ability to do that independently of the state labor board. And I know that's one of the issues that people have talked about that has been, I've been inquired, my office produced a legal opinion after the first presentation, I guess, in the spring. And there was a group from Yale who had made a non-specific sort of presentation, as I remember, proposal about a wage theft ordinance, I think, being enforced by the health department. So we really didn't have, with that request, anything specific to look at. some number of months prior to that, the same group had approached our office with an actual proposed ordinance, but there were a number of problems with that along the lines of, first of all, our ability to do that. And second of all, the capacity of the health department, which employs sanitarians and does license certain restaurants and food vendors. And, their focus is public health, is disease and vermin and cleanliness and issues like that they have trained sanitarians to enforce. And they don't have accountants who can do review labor, what should I say, wage issues and financial records and things like that. So, there's a number of issues with that type of proposal. It doesn't mean that the city, working with other agencies, particularly a number of them, I think, would be under probably Community Service Administration that Eliza Halsey can speak to afterwards. We could do to support people at least to make complaints, or another option would be to work with our state delegation and to make some proposals to amend the state statutes, which would then allow us to be able to do more in this area. And if we're successful at that, then obviously the city's got to be able to develop the capacity to do it. And that's kind of a longer term project, but in the short term, I think that possibly even working with the police department, an agency that could work together with the police that could facilitate some of these complaints, because I know law enforcement also often gets involved with a number of people who have other problems. May have substance use problems, drug addiction, mental health problems. A lot of these folks don't belong in the criminal justice system. But people who commit wage theft are, in my view, just predators. And they should be in the criminal justice system. So if there's a way that we can help work with the system we have for now and look forward to what changes we make, I think that's a particular area that I know was discussed. And, I'd be certainly happy to work on it in the long term and the short term solutions for that. So that's, I guess, one of the issues that came up. And then the other issue is sanctuary city that was discussed. We do have an executive order that, at the time that it was written in 2020, we titled it Welcoming City, because at that time, if you may recall, we had a different national administration, and sanctuary city was almost a dog whistle term for some people who were in positions of power in government at that time. And also the mayor, I think, felt like welcoming city was a little more of what he wanted to express. And that executive order is still in effect today, and it regulates, as many sanctuary city ordinances do, the ability of law enforcement and city officials to interact with immigration officials, and basically prohibits them in general from interacting with immigration and reporting people to immigration unless they're required to do so by law. Immigration is regulated by the federal government. And at the time we were working on this executive order, there are certain grants and funding sources that come from the federal government. And under some of those particular requirements, the city has to comply with federal law. So I think most of the prohibitions in these are written that the police can't do certain things or employees can't do certain things unless it's specifically required by law. And sanctuary cities is basically kind of a generic term for jurisdictions that have these types of ordinances or laws in place. The state has the Trust Act, which regulates the ability of law enforcement to interact with immigration officials. So we do have on the books for that. And it does apply to municipal law enforcement officials. The statute citation is 54-192H. And I'll be happy to make that available to legislative services. So, and they can then provide it to you. So they do have a Trust Act in place for interactions with immigration at the state level. And interestingly enough, there was a Florida federal court ruled that a Florida state ban on sanctuary cities was unconstitutional in violation of the Equal Protection Clause. So a lot of the sanctuary city authority comes from the Equal Protection Clause. In Connecticut, we have such a clause that forbids anyone from depriving someone of their rights and privileges based on, race, religion, creed, the gender, sex, those types of statuses. So that's generally the foundation for the sanctuary city powers. But there's no specific, other than the restriction on dealing with immigration and deporting people, there's no real other set of sanctuary city laws, so to speak. It doesn't affect our ability to provide services, so to speak. So that's a little bit of a background on the sanctuary cities. We have not been asked to draft an ordinance. I think the mayor wanted to do the executive order as part of what he wanted to do, once he took office. I think we got that out in July, in the middle of the pandemic. But, it's certainly something we would be looking to do if we were asked. The Board of Alders obviously governs and controls the legislative agenda, so it's not something that we couldn't do. We certainly would do it if we were asked, but at the time it was the mayor who wanted the executive order. And an employee could be disciplined for violating this order. So it's pretty similar to a work rule, so to speak, for our city employees. So that's, I guess, what I would address. The other question that I had, or that came to me, was the procedures for making a complaint. And at this, for an immigrant to make a complaint, at this point, they would make the complaint to whatever city department their matter pertained to. In other words, there's no prohibition, obviously, against an immigrant making a complaint to the Fair Rent Commission, to the police department, to LCI. Any of our city agencies would take a complaint from anyone who made it. We can't inquire about their immigration status. It's not relevant. So at this point, there's no sort of organizing point or focal point for immigrants who could make a complaint, and then the city would sort of direct it. If we were to establish an office that would assist immigrants, that would probably be one of the components that would be helpful. At this point, any agency would certainly take a complaint from anyone.
Thank you for your presentation. Any questions from committee members? Alder Singh.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Attorney. Earlier, Sister Marriott spoke about LLC for immigrants, undocumented immigrant, if they could, start an LLC or apply for the status of an LLC. Could you touch on that, please?
Sure. Well, LLCs and that determination is also regulated by the Secretary of State. So that's something that is controlled. The applicant would have to provide whatever the Secretary of State required in order to set up an LLC. As far as I know, the city does not have any particular agency that would assist an immigrant in making that application. But the city cannot grant any business the status of being an LLC. That has to go through the state, the Secretary of State's office.
Follow up. You may not have the answer tonight, but if you could, what is the legal process, or what document necessary to apply?
I believe the Secretary of State website would provide that information. You could probably get it from there. I don't believe it's that complicated. an applicant who has maybe a complicated situation might have to consult their own lawyer, who's the city, the corporation council represents the city. We don't have the ability to represent individual people. But I don't think it's that complicated, to be honest with you. But that would all be on the Secretary of State's website.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions for Corporation Counsel?
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Thank you for presenting. I think it was all really, really helpful information. I think just to touch back on sort of the executive order and then the ordinance, you mentioned that the Board of Alders in theory could ask you to draft an ordinance. Would there be any difference between the current executive order that we have now and the ordinance, other than the fact that it would be a lot tougher to overturn or overturn the ordinance at a future point compared to an executive order, which my understanding is, let's say a future mayor comes in and isn't necessarily on board with that order, they could in theory revoke it. But I want to see if you could provide a little more clarification.
Well, that would be, to your point, I think you're exactly right. A future mayor could come in and decide they're going to vacate the order, and then it's gone. Once it's an ordinance, it takes a vote of the Board of Alders to vacate or amend or change that. I don't believe there would be much of a difference, but I think it would involve working with the board or the legislation committee to see what they wanted in their ordinance, and if they wanted something different, whether it's something we can include.
Okay, thank you very much. And then, this isn't much of a comment, question, more of a comment, but I mean, you mentioned any agency can receive a complaint for wage theft violation, but I think it might be related more to CSA. I think it'd be perfect. It would be great to identify maybe a specific department or something where people can start at least and say this is a place I can go to report a wage theft complaint, rather than being not knowing, hey, let me go to the health department, or hey, let me go to another commission or a department. So not much of a question, but more of a comment.
Well, the department would be the police department, and I'm well aware that there are a lot of immigrants who just don't trust the police based on their own experiences in their home countries, unfortunately. So to find a way to make that a little more user-friendly, if you will, and less threatening to people, would certainly, I think, be helpful and something the city could work on. And I believe the chief would be receptive, to be honest with you. I think he would be very receptive to finding some way for us to be to provide a liaison type of service.
Thank you so much. All the marks.
Thank you, Attorney King. Appreciate your presentation and given much food for thought on enabling legislation and what the state does and doesn't allow. We do have probably not the forum for an extensive conversation about the proposed ordinance, but I understand your office has done some initial analysis. Just a question whether there's been comparative analysis. We had heard from some presenters, and I think I'm also aware that other cities, perhaps in other states, do. So I'm just sort of curious to know if there has been comparative analysis done to understand what those ordinances look like, and really, I guess, the question of what it means to occupy a field. A state can occupy a field by truly occupying a field, or it could be occupying the field by virtue of the fact that just nothing's ever been done by the city, but it's not an occupation. So just curious to know about parallels from other states, and if that analysis has been done, it'd be interesting to see that at some point. Thank you.
I'm going to answer that only because asking Attorney King. One of the things that I asked that group is to specifically provide a model so that I can be able to conduct an assessment. And the model that they use is the model from California. And I can certainly share that. I think they shared it at the last meeting as well. And when we assessed that model, the model did not have the sanitarians doing the direct enforcement. What it did, however, and I thought the model was pretty interesting, is that if the applicant, business owner who's trying to open up a business, has a labor violation, will not be allowed to get a license from the health department. So sort of like what we have already. So like it goes through fire, building, zoning, tax assessor's office. It, certainly the labor violation can be added, and then we are, and by we I mean the health department is the last signatory. So we are the, there's a significant, all these steps have to be sort of signed off on, and then the health department can then issue a license. And so I thought that model was feasible. Nevertheless, this particular group wants to pilot something that's more stringent, giving the authority to the sanitarians. And I do find it admirable that they think the health department can regulate everything. It's just not within our purview. But certainly understand the issue and recognize that the issue is real, and trying to figure out ways that we can support is certainly something that we're open to.
And I also, San Francisco is a city with probably almost 1 million people. And I'm sure they have a more complicated city structure and a bigger city budget. And I don't know what the enabling legislation may or may not be in California at the state level that would allow that. But if that model were used, it seems like the applicant would still have to go through the enforcement process, where they get their due process, there's an accusation, there's a level of proof against them, there's a conviction. So they would have to go through all of that before the health department would be able to do anything, with regard to denying or revoking a license. And I would think you would need some enabling legislation at the state level, because you also would have someone who's then getting an additional punishment, if you will, beyond what may be provided for in the criminal law. And that's just off the top of my head. I can see that type of issue being challenged on that basis, but, it's not something, we can certainly look at it.
And I'm just gonna stop you 1 second. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, but state your name and address for the record. Even though you spoke, I didn't want to stop you for your train of thought.
Marissa Bond, 54 Meadow Street in Connecticut.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for engaging in the question. I think it's very interesting and thought-provoking and clearly important based on the testimony we heard from organizations as to what they're seeing in the community as to a violation that's significant. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Alder Miller.
Thank you for all the information, and just to echo appreciation for engaging on this complicated issue, trying to understand what the boundaries of what we can't do, but also to think creatively about what we can do. I just have one question about the process, the licensing process. So right now, is there any check? I know we have to go through all the city compliance. Is there any check of compliance with state agencies like DRS or labor now?
There's no
and there's no process for that in place.
Correct. Or legislation.
I also, it is my understanding that when we did the ID card years ago, there was also this question about whether we needed enabling legislation. And there were some in city staff who thought that was needed, and they went ahead anyway. I'm wondering if you are aware of that, and if you have any sense of how this may be similar or different.
I wasn't around in 2007, at least in this, I was around, obviously, but not in this job. I don't recall that, but we did have the issue arise in the landlord licensing ordinance that we did. And that was litigated in state court, and I don't have the citation in front of me, but I can also provide it. And that was a case where the court determined that the city had the authority to do it because the state did not occupy the field. The state did not do landlord licensing, but we were allowed to do it under, I believe, our police power. So that's where the occupy the field term gets used, in the legal sense. So that was one distinction. We prevailed in that one. I'm not sure right now we prevail on wage theft, basically, frankly. But I can also circulate that if you want to try to read your way through it. I don't remember it being particularly, some legal opinions are not the most understandable things you ever tried to read, but I don't remember this one being that.
I'll pass on that one.
I can always try.
I do just really appreciate it. We can have further conversation about it and we can come up with, I think, any additional thoughts you have through the chair to share with the committee would be helpful as we just think about this further.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it.
Thank you.
Just one quick thing, Attorney King. So I just wanted to make sure, like, is there no underlying, I mean, I think my colleague mentioned it, but is there no underlying law that currently, like, supports the ID card program, or is it?
You know, when I was looking at this afternoon, I was, I found a statute, I don't have it written down in front of me, where a municipal identification card was acceptable identification for opening it would be like a utility account, like cable TV, it sounded like, was particularly meant for. And that was the one reference I did find in the statutes that would accept a municipal identification card. So I don't think there's anything that would prohibit it. I don't know what was going on in 2007, but currently it was in this one statute that I found when I was looking at it.
I mean, through us co-chairs, could we get a look at that statute? Just take a look at it, sure. What it details. But yeah, thank you, Madam Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. And I guess while you were speaking, Director Bond, so if you have anything else that you want to add to that can help us understand what is in our capacity.
Yeah, of course. I think it illustrates that we have sort of like a historical background shared today by Kika Matos, who really spearheaded this initiative around the city resident ID card, and certainly can attest to sort of the evolution of the process and the promotion and marketing efforts put forth. When I onboarded about 4.5 years ago, I certainly wanted to make sure that in the midst of COVID, we still sort of fixed the machine, made sure that we still had this service when we fully reopened, and recognized the importance of it. So I do want to recognize that, yes, I feel that perhaps different priorities for different administrations certainly was present. And so, and it also has evolved since we've reopened. I do want to recognize, and having Carlos Sosa Lombardo here as the Director of Community Resilience, how the ID program has sort of transitioned to a pilot model that was launched earlier this year as a partnership. And certainly I will elaborate, but Carlos can answer some questions specifically to the program. But in essence, what we did with the City ID is to partner with a philanthropy organization that allowed us to issue about 40 cards, and the Elm City IDs became almost like a debit card for the individuals that are coming out of being incarcerated, and has been very successful. So that pilot, I think to date we have issued 40 from this collaboration. And so looking forward to certainly seeing what else we can do. We have provided some data in the package for you on where, how many we have issued, and so that is before you. The youth at work are also benefiting from the ID program so that they can be able to partner and cash their checks at the New Haven Bank. So certainly working towards making sure that we continue to promote it. And so that's sort of an overview about the Elm City resident ID program that I wanted to sort of add. I think also tonight, as I heard other individuals shared their experiences and some of their gaps in with services, I think as an agent of the state, my primary role is to implement and regulate statutory laws, and those mandates are often unfunded. a lot of them, mostly all of them. And they require really an overview of the health and safety of the overall population and making sure that we minimize as much as possible the risk to any type of infectious diseases and other harm for individuals. And so certainly think that tonight, after hearing some testimony regarding the challenges in getting licensed for food permits, some education around the process and the state rules that exist, and offer opportunities that could be bilingual in other languages to be able to do that for the community. Certainly, we should not be selling out of our homes, but recognize that education can offer an opportunity. And then again, I'm also recognizing that these are state regulations that we have to adhere to, in addition to federal guidelines like the food code from the Food Drug Administration. I think the other component that I wanted to highlight before I close is that we also provide services regardless of status. And so we provide physicals, vaccines, STI services, as well as STI testing, as well as HIV testing, and also Hep C testing. So within the last year, we were able to reopen our clinical services to making sure that we meet the need of the community. We just hired a clinical charge nurse who I want to partner with and be able to actually go into Sarah Miller's ward to address a lot of the sex worker issues that we're seeing, and making sure that the services that we offer that community specifically can benefit from. And so that sort of concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you. And since you brought up the Director Lombardo, Sosa Lombardo,
Good evening.
you're on.
Thank you so much. Carlos Sosa Lombardo from Cooper Place, New Haven, Connecticut. A pleasure to be here, elders. It's a long night. I promise I won't be long, as usual. And I just thought I would run you through some of the services that my department provides. Most of the services, people, regardless of whether they are documented or not, they can access mostly. Last fiscal year, we served almost 9,000 households through different interventions, including housing and homelessness services, community mental health initiatives, and violence prevention and intervention special projects. Under the housing and homelessness services, we have a vast portfolio of supportive services that many people can access, including immigrants. We have warming and overflow centers to make sure that people have a safe space to sleep at night. We have navigation hubs that provide services for unsheltered community members. We do a lot of outreach and encampments and people who are living on the streets. We have a one-stop shop pop-up shower that on a seasonal basis provides services across the city. We have diversion and case management for families, rental assistance, and we right now have a temporary 50 shelter beds at 29 Terminal. In terms of community mental health, we have City Compass, the community healing support team. We also provide community trainings to make sure that community members are equipped and able to respond to crises in their own neighborhoods, and also provide support to their friends and family members. We also have case managers embedded at 3 public libraries. We have one in downtown, one in Fairhaven, and one in Wilson Library, to provide crisis care and case management services to people who are in crisis and often visit the libraries. Under our special projects, we have our violence reduction initiative, PRESS. We have street outreach and violence mediation, victim services. We have a reentry welcome center, all of these services are accessible by immigrants. We also have the municipal identification card for the formerly incarcerated, which Marisa also mentioned that we added a feature to it, and we are able, through a partnership with MasterCard and the 4CT Foundation, we're able to provide these prepaid cards to people where they are depositing $500 every month for a period of a year. That card has also the possibility to bring online other services such as library. If we desire in the future to pursue that venue, we can use this as a library card as well. And part of that is also our guaranteed income pilot project. And on this list, I also have public housing for the formerly incarcerated. Unfortunately, immigrants cannot access that that service. Section 8 vouchers and low-income public housing in partnership with the Housing Authority. And I mean, I don't want to say something inaccurate, but I'm pretty sure it's because of federal regulations, and HUD is the one that oversees and regulates the Section 8 vouchers and the low-income public housing projects. And that's it. That's the end for my presentation.
Okay, thank you for that. Just to clarify, all of the services that you've mentioned are available to everyone in the community, regardless of their status?
Except for the public housing.
Except for the public housing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from committee members?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Questions addressed Director Bonds. Thank you, Director Bonds, for coming on tonight. Could you speak a little bit on the vaccine service you're providing, if there is any, please?
So we're offering childhood vaccinations, all of them. So anyone that needs to enter into the school systems, we offer the vaccines as well as physicals. And then we also are currently offering Moderna and regular flu vaccines, as well as a high dose vaccines for seniors, for all adults within the city of New Haven.
What is the requirement for a patient?
We do charge a nominal fee to cover some administrative costs, but we will wait if someone is uninsured. So that's certainly something that we offer.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
RSV as well?
We do not have RSV.
Okay, thank you. Alder Marks.
Thank you, Dr. Cesar, for your presentation, for this just amazing portfolio of services that you're overseeing. In light of the federal regulation limitation on access to public housing, can you speak for a moment about the CAN network? The last time you were at a workshop, you gave a wonderful presentation about the CAN system. How do undocumented individuals interact with the CAN system, and which of those services are limited? Any limitations on ARPA funds or other federal funds? If you could talk about how undocumented individuals interact with CAN.
Yes, that's a great question. So the CAN is a coordinated access network. In Connecticut, the homeless response system is divided into CANs. Each region have their own CAN. Greater New Haven has its own CAN, which the city of New Haven participates in. Right now, we have, I believe, over 700 people in the waiting list in our region. Some of them are immigrants, some of them are natural people to New Haven. About 80% of the people in the wait list right now in the CAN are people from New Haven. Everybody, regardless of immigration status, has to call 211 to access housing services. Immigrants can access, most of them, they can access shelters, they can access warming centers, even permanent supportive housing. The biggest roadblock is the Section 8 and low-income public housing that they are not able to access. They are also able to access rapid rehousing resources. And yeah.
If I may ask a follow-up question. So is immigration status asked and screened at the CAN?
No.
And then are there different tracks in terms of what housing is available? How does it work from a consumer perspective when an undocumented person contacts the CAN?
Yeah. There's no difference in the type of services undocumented person will receive. They all go through the same process. The same triage. Basically, it's a first come, first serve, along with some criteria for prioritization that have to do with chronic homelessness. It has to do whether the person has some type of mental health issues, substance abuse issues, physical issues, whether they are minors, youth. There's the different criteria that they get screened for, and then they're prioritized on a big list. Independent of the type of resources they're seeking, they're pulled from that list and provided opportunity to access those resources. There are different tracks. People may call to access a shelter. People may call to get an outreach worker to do their intake on the streets and confirm that they are homeless. People may call to also seek additional support services. They may need access to showers, to laundry, basic needs. Yeah, I think that's all that it has to. It's not an ideal system. It's not an ideal system. It's not an ideal system for immigrants. It's not an ideal system for people who are born in this country either. It's something that needs to be improved. And we're working on a daily basis with the state to do that. At the same time, I believe that about 90% of the services provided by the CAN are accessible by immigrants.
Thank you, Grant. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Moore. Any other questions? Alderman Miller?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for whomever wants to answer. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the citywide framework proposal, having some kind of structure or system within the city for looking at all of city services sort of through the lens of the immigrant experience, and specifically language, create a welcoming space within City Hall, within city process for people who are monolingual or don't speak English. I know it's a big question. I'm just wondering in general, what are your thoughts about that?
I'll take this one. Eliza Halsey, staying at 129 Marble Road in New Haven. I'm the Community Services Administrator. And I'll just say, first, thank you for raising the issue. Thank you for bringing together the organizations that are doing a lot of the day-to-day work that is really critical to help us all address this issue. And I'll say from a CSA standpoint, we're open to thinking about what this framework might look like, what role we can play in developing it, and also thinking about working together with departments, together with the Board of Alders and our community partners to think about what are the spaces. We got a lot of information today, and I think there are a lot of efforts and initiatives underway, and there's opportunity to engage about, listen to immigrants in the various spaces. I would imagine through our community partners to get some of that input directly, and then to use that to incorporate into things like a clear complaint process for lodging issues and concerns, as well as thinking about what might this framework look like. So I think obviously CSA includes a number of different departments, and so I think we're open to working with you all to think about what that might look like.
Yeah, I just want to add, so most of my career, over 10 years, I devoted around linguistic and cultural rights and advocacy work across the state of Connecticut, and actually was the first nonprofit agency to develop formal training. So I just want to acknowledge the interpreter. She did an amazing job, and even used the correct terminology about site interpretation and everything. So I just want to commend you for an amazing interpreting versus translation services. And for us at the health department, that's been also at the forefront in making sure that we institute that and have those services available, just like the language line, etc. In addition, both Eliza and I are working, are part of the committee on looking at the city's 10-year plan, the master plan. And so I think that is where our voices can lend and bring awareness of making sure that that's being included. But certainly we've been already sort of vocal at the first launch meeting. So we will certainly make sure that that's mentioned during those meetings so that we, as we're preparing the city vision for the next 10 years, that it's inclusive.
And the other point that sort of came to my mind when the immigrants were all speaking about the barriers and the difficulties they had is that they're not unlike difficulties that disabled individuals have. And the Office of Disability Services is under under Corporation Counsel, and they're very, very similar. So it may be also a way for us to address the needs of another group of people that also need assistance and, need direction sometimes and more support. So that did come to my mind. And
she said in the committee.
Oh, good. Yeah, we have an excellent, right now, Director of Disability Services, but I was kind of struck at how similar some of the complaints, some of the issues were.
I thank you for answering, even though I know it's a big question, and just appreciate your willingness to engage and think about all this. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know it's getting late, but while it was going on, my thought was going when we were talking about resident service. If we should try to form or establish a resident service office that deals with
Immigration.
General, if you want to pay your taxes, where do I go? What's the information? If I need public works about that, where we go? We need to speak to CSA, or we need to speak to a specific office that deal with residents, or residents information office that have all these information there. This
I think that's us.
No, this is for the city to establish. That's my thought was going.
No, they have if anybody's ever been over to the GA, they have the court services desk there.
Yeah.
That helps people.
Yeah.
And I know Victor who works there,
Yeah.
that directs people who don't know where they're going or don't know how to find the courtroom they're supposed to be in or what a docket looks like. And, from what you were saying, it kind of came to my mind. Right now, we just sort of have a security service there at the front desk, but maybe some type of information desk.
And certain cities have adopted that already.
Information or resident service.
Something like that, right? We'll come up with a name for it. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alderson. We heard a lot tonight. We heard a lot from Kika Matos. We heard a lot of suggestions being made. I think we need to absorb it all, and you all as well. But there were some things like a welcoming center for immigrants, or some kind of immigration office. I don't know if that's something that CSA could consider, is an office where whoever comes in can go there and get certain information, even if it's just you hooking them up with an agency like Junta or Iris or whomever, as well as, we heard also on funding for immigration court. I know that that's a big task for the city to take on, and even maybe for the state, but it was mentioned that maybe we can but go to the federal government for assistance. I know we have to start somewhere, and if it means going to the state that has to go to the federal government, then so be it. Sorry, I'm Italian. These are just food for thought. I'm not looking for any answers, but I don't know if your office can look into things like that, or avenues to take. I know it's a big task, but those were the asks, right? Those were what I heard anyway. Also, we have many, many task forces, and it seems like we have all these agencies between Junta, Apostle Immigration Services, ULA, Semilla Colectiva. And whomever else, and I apologize if I'm forgetting any, but maybe a task force where they could get together once a quarter, a month, whatever anyone decides, with maybe someone from your department, from CSA, that could be a part of it and bring them all together to talk about their challenges, to talk about how some of these ideas can come to fruition. This conversation doesn't end here, right?
I'm certainly open to thinking about those things, and while also recognizing that our current team, and you've heard it over and over again, right? They're each in their respective areas, often a team of one, and I do think this is an important issue, and we want to think creatively. We want to make sure that we're listening and leveraging resources in a way that works for all of our residents. And I think immigrants are, in some ways, like the unhoused and other populations, right? They are a more vulnerable group that we want to make sure that with an equity lens, we're thinking about in a different way. So open to thinking about that.
And, what communication do we have with the agencies?
So I will say, as it's been about 3 months, so I've had some engagement with some of the organizations, but for in my particular role, I've had some engagement with the organizations, but certainly not as a collective in the way that you're describing. And I think ultimately across CSA departments, whether it be libraries in Fairhaven are definitely collaborating across a lot, with a lot of the organizations that you heard speaking today. And you'll see that across the city in terms of it being in a cohesive, collaborative coalition type of engagement. I'm not sure that exists right now.
I guess, again, this is all conversations that we need to continue having, and possibly coming up with some simple solutions to start with, or simple things to start with that could help some of these immigrants get the information that they need without difficulty.
If I can just quickly add to my colleagues' comments. Yeah, I think things like translating documents into Spanish. I remember someone asked for some LCI documents related to the rental assistance programs that came out with the help of ARPA funds, and I had to manually kind of translate it using some software for Google. But things like that would have been kind of helpful to already have, just so I could send to somebody who just kind of use it to more easily understand what the program is about and whether they qualify or not. And then I think Kika also mentioned earlier, like a list of Spanish speakers, or even I think the directory does a great job of listing who's there, but maybe having on the website say Spanish.
I do want to caution around that. So only because someone speaks the language does not make them qualified. And that is exactly what I was advocating for over a decade. So that's first and foremost. So I want to caution around that. Second, there's definitely some restrictions with when you're hiring employees, when they were not being hired as a bilingual employee specifically, and then union issues can happen. While I think it is important for us to have a repository of interpreters, we partner very closely with IRS, for example, to assist us with families. We just want to be careful with the qualification of individuals and stop using Google. I'm just kidding.
Use a Deep L.
Which one?
Deep L. It's like a way better than Google Translate. But that's I think there's things like that are super helpful for us on the board to know and understand what restrictions that might have. What we can kind of do to work around that. I think my colleague, a lot of stuff that I think we'll talk about. So thank you.
Great. Anything else?
Not a question, more of a comment. I think, on other issues where there have been multiple proposals and a lot of different things to discuss and different stakeholders, the task force structure has been really helpful. And so I think for this, that might be a really good, concrete next step, perhaps in the new term, to put together some kind of a task force to really look at this from all the different angles and bring all the stakeholders to the table. So if I can be helpful on that, I'm happy to.
Anything else that anyone wanted to add? Thank you for your patience. Thank you for being here. I know it's late and we still actually have to listen to public testimony. So thank you. And, like I mentioned before, this is a conversation that will continue. And if we can help in any way to come together with you guys, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to testify on this item? Is there anyone from the public that would like to testify? Please come forward. And for a third time, is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this item? Seeing no one, do I hear a motion to close the public portion?
Madam Chair, make a motion to close the public portion.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on closing the public portion of this meeting? Seeing none, all in favor of closing the public portion, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Public portion has been closed. Do I hear a motion to move the item? Actually, do we want to discuss it before we, well, let's move it and second it. Never mind, it's getting late.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to move the item that's on the agenda tonight.
Item has been moved and seconded. Any discussion on this, any further discussion on this item?
Madam Chair, if I may, quickly, going forward, as I mentioned earlier, Office of Resident Service, we need to think about and how we can all collaborate and put that together for serving our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just reiterate that I think this is one of those topics that there's many different issues to look at. Resident service office is one, language is another. There's a bunch of buckets that could be looked at in depth with recommendations made. And I think we should look at how we put that into practice. I don't want to go forward with something concrete tonight, but think about what that really looks like and then move forward perhaps in a future committee meeting to advance that.
Any further discussion? Alder Houston.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Yeah, and just to, again, sort of wrap up this small conversation. Yeah, I think a lot of what we've heard tonight and in the previous workshop indicates that a lot of the issues that immigrants face are a lot of the issues that regular New Haven residents who are documented face as well. And so I think it's pretty interesting and cool that we're all sort of united by similar issues, but also some different issues. And I think the city obviously still has a lot more work to do on these various issues, ranging from wage theft, to accessibility, to cultural competency, maybe even working with cultural affairs a bit more, on our end to point out different events in our communities that really showcase, diversity that we have that oftentimes comes from immigrants. And yeah, I kind of think I think thankful for colleagues for being here and for staff for coming out to hear from other people, for people in our community. And like it was mentioned earlier, we haven't heard directly from people, undocumented immigrants as much as we can. So I think definitely encourage ourselves in the city to do
to find innovative ways to do that. So, yeah, that's my comments. Madam Chair, Co-Chair.
Any further discussion? I'll just add that, we heard a lot of information this evening from Kika Matos, from also the agencies, the immigration agencies, even from our city personnel. And there's a lot that we need to do. Some of it is going to be a little more complicated than others, but something as simple as a welcoming center for immigrants is not that complicated. Putting together a task force with all the agencies shouldn't be complicated. Maybe it is, but it shouldn't be. And that should be something we could start with as well, because a lot of ideas will come and stem from that. Where it gets complicated is, the getting funding for legal services. That's where a big chunk of expense comes in, and that's where the challenges come. But coming together, we can get creative in how to try and obtain that. Everything is a goal, right? We need to set these goals, we need to try and achieve them, but it's step by step. But if we could start with those baby steps of a task force, of a welcoming center, then that can lead to developing this manual that Kika Matos mentioned, and developing, other services that maybe we haven't thought about. But we have agencies that are out there that are experienced in this, and we need to take better advantage of their services and their knowledge base. So we have a lot of work to do. Now, tonight we are going to vote to read and file this item, and that's only because we're coming to the end of our terms, or we start fresh January 1st. With that in mind, it doesn't mean that this conversation ends here. This conversation will continue. And because it's a workshop, it's up to the chairs to just even get leadership's approval to just hold one. We don't even have to put in a communication, although a communication is better, just to get the word out there. And I know Alder Guzne is moving on to bigger and better things, but he's a New Haven kid. And I call you a kid because you're like my son. And of course, you can always submit a communication in case we forget and hold us accountable. So with that, I want to thank you for your service on this board, on the Health and Human Services Committee, and for co-chairing this meeting with me for a second time. It's been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you so much, Albert.
And wish you all the best.
I second that.
With that, any other discussion? Hearing none, we will move on to take a vote. All in favor of reading and filing this item, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions? The ayes carry. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Any nays? Abstentions? We are adjourned. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you, staff.